I saw it happen in slow motion. The email wasn't meant for me. Nora's billing rate to clients will remain at $300 hour, but keep her at $12 hour through Q4. She doesn't have the leverage to negotiate single mom, community college background, classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome. She'll take whatever we give her. My fingers froze over my keyboard. My throat closed up. The message from Garrett to HR had been accidentally CC'd to the entire development team. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. Then came the frantic recall attempt. Then his office door slammed shut. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, staring at my screen. 26 lines of back-end code blurring as something cold and hard crystallized in my chest. My name is Nora Vargas. I was 31 years old and had spent the last 9 months rebuilding Axion Dynamics' entire client portal from scratch while living on ramen and prayer. Before I continue, if you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and please hit subscribe. This channel has been my therapy since everything happened. I came to Axion with big dreams and bigger student loans. My daughter Zara was 4 then, with medical needs that kept my insurance requirements non-negotiable. My ex had vanished to Uruguay with his yoga instructor, leaving nothing but a post-it note and child support payments that arrived randomly, if at all. When I interviewed at Axion, Garrett Pembroke leaned back in his chair, this enormous leather throne that probably cost more than my car, and told me they were taking a chance on me. My coding was promising but unrefined. He offered $12 an hour as a junior developer, promising a review in 6 months. "We're a family here at Axion," he said, showing me photos of company retreats I'd later discover only senior staff were invited to. "We invest in people who invest in us." I believed him because I needed to, because Zara's medication cost $1,400 a month, and our landlord had just raised the rent again. That first day, they put me in the corner desk with the wobbly leg, next to the bathroom where the toilet ran constantly. My computer was 7 years old and took 14 minutes to boot up. My training consisted of being handed a stack of outdated documentation and told to figure it out. But I did. God help me, I did. I stayed late every night, learning Axion's glitchy, fragmented systems. I rebuilt components nobody else would touch. I streamlined processes so ancient the original programmers had retired. Within 3 months, clients were specifically requesting me on their projects. "You have such a way of explaining complex things," they'd say. "Nobody's ever made this make sense before." I didn't know then that Axion was billing them $300 an hour for my time. I was still making $12. The 6-month review never happened. When I finally worked up the courage to ask about it, Garrett looked annoyed, like I'd interrupted something important. "We're tightening belts right now, Nora. The economy, you know how it is." He didn't look up from his phone as he said it. "Maybe next quarter." That same afternoon, I overheard him booking a yacht for his summer vacation. His 3rd vacation that year. I started eating lunch in my car after that, partly to save the $5 I'd spend at the vending machine, partly because I couldn't stand watching the executives order $200 sushi platters for their meetings while I rationed my daughter's applesauce cups to last the week. Things came to a head on a Tuesday in July. The office AC was broken, but only in the developer bullpen, of course. The executive floor stayed frosty cold. My shirt stuck to my back as I debugged a critical client issue, racing against a deadline nobody had bothered to tell me about until that morning. Garrett strolled in at 11:30, fresh from a golf game, looking right through me as he asked, "How's that Meridian project coming?" "They're our biggest client. Can't afford any screw-ups." "Almost done," I said, not mentioning I'd been there since 5 a.m. "Just fixing the payment processing integration." "Good, good." He checked his Rolex, a new one, different from last week's. "They're paying premium rates for this rush job, so make it perfect." Something made me ask, what does Meridian pay for rush development work? His eyes narrowed, but he answered casually. $3.50 an hour. Corporate rate. $350 an hour. For my work. My $12 an hour labor. That night, after putting Zara to bed in our one-bedroom apartment where she slept on the pull-out couch because I couldn't afford a two-bedroom, I opened my laptop. Not my work computer. My personal one. The ancient Dell I'd pieced together from parts found at university surplus sales. I started building. Not just coding planning. Drawing diagrams. Thinking like the business owner no one at Axion would ever believe I could be. I studied their client contracts when no one was looking. I analyzed their pricing structure. I documented their failings and inefficiencies. Every night, from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., I built my alternative. I called it Luma, a client portal system so intuitive, so elegant, that it made Axion's platform look like it was built in the Stone Age. Because, honestly, parts of it were. I named my company Solaris Digital. Just seeing the words in my registration documents made me feel powerful for the first time in years. During the day, I kept my head down at Axion. I smiled when Garrett complained about budget constraints while wearing a new designer watch. I nodded when HR sent around a memo about postponing performance reviews due to economic uncertainty. The same week, they renovated the executive washrooms with imported marble. I worked harder than ever on their projects. Because every line of code I wrote for them taught me something I could improve in my own system. 3 months into my nighttime venture, my neighbor Pia, a graphic designer who'd been similarly exploited at her agency, joined me. We worked from my kitchen table after our kids were asleep, her designing the beautiful interface that would make my powerful backend shine. "They'll never see it coming," she whispered one night at 2 a.m. as we high-fived over a breakthrough. "They think people like us are just grateful for the scraps." By month 4, I had a working prototype. By month 5, I had secured a small business loan based on the strength of the platform alone. The loan officer actually said, "This is the most impressive bootstrap project I've seen in years." I used some of that money to consult with a lawyer about my Axion contract. Turns out, they'd been so cheap and careless, they'd used an outdated template that failed to include a non-compete clause or any language about intellectual property developed on my own time, with my own resources. "You're clear," the lawyer said. "They have no claim on what you've built independently." At work, things were getting worse. Garrett hired his nephew as a development consultant at $85 an hour, despite the kid not knowing the difference between Java and JavaScript. Meanwhile, my request for a $2 raise was met with a patronizing lecture about paying my dues and the realities of business. The final straw came during a client meeting I wasn't supposed to attend. I was called in last minute when the demo Garrett's nephew had prepared crashed spectacularly. The client was Meridian Technologies, Axion's biggest account. Their CEO, Elise Werner, was known for her brilliance and zero tolerance for incompetence. I fixed the demo in real time, explaining the features as I recovered the data, somehow managing to look calm despite my internal panic. When it was over, Elise looked at me, then at Garrett. "Who is this?" she asked him. "Oh, just one of our junior people," he said dismissively. "Nora's been with us about a year." Elise's eyes never left mine. "You built this entire system?" Before Garrett could interrupt, I nodded. "Yes, and the previous version too." Elise handed me her card. Not her company card, but her personal one, with her private number handwritten on the back. "Call me," she said quietly. "We should talk." Garrett's face darkened as he escorted her out, his hand firmly on her elbow, as if to steer her away from me. Through the glass conference room walls, I saw him laughing too loudly at something she said, while she looked back at me with curious eyes. That night after Zara fell asleep, I called the number. I've been watching you solve problems in real time for 90 minutes, Elise said without preamble. That's more impressive than most developers' portfolios. What's your story, Nora? So I told her. Not everything. I wasn't ready to reveal Luma yet, but enough. About my background, my education, my daughter, my passion for elegant solutions. What's Axion paying you? She asked bluntly. I hesitated, then told her. The silence that followed was so long, I thought we'd been disconnected. $12 an hour, she finally repeated. And they bill us. She stopped herself. I see. 2 days later, Garrett called me into his office. His face was flushed with what I initially thought was anger, but later realized was fear. Meridian is concerned about some aspects of their project, he said stiffly. Elise Werner has requested that you be the primary point of contact going forward. Exclusively. He made it sound like an accusation. Okay, I said. What did you say to her? He demanded. Nothing about Axion. I answered truthfully. I hadn't needed to. She'd figured it out herself. For the next 3 weeks, I worked directly with Meridian, attending video calls that Garrett was pointedly not invited to. Elise and her team respected my input, actually implemented my suggestions, and treated me like a professional. Meanwhile, Luma was nearly complete. Pia and I had built something truly revolutionary. A system that did everything Axion's platform did, but faster, more securely, and with an interface so intuitive that user testing groups were calling it magical. I'd secured a small office space, nothing fancy, just a room above a coffee shop owned by another mom from Zara's school who'd given me a deal on the rent. I'd hired 2 other developers, both brilliant women who'd been similarly undervalued at their jobs. We worked nights and weekends, fueled by determination and discount grocery store coffee. Then came the day I'd been both dreading and anticipating. The day I finally had to give my 2 weeks' notice at Axion. I printed the letter on plain white paper. No fancy letterhead. I wasn't ready to reveal Solaris Digital yet. Just a simple, professional resignation. Garrett was on his phone when I knocked on his open door. He held up one finger, making me wait while he finished what sounded like a lunch reservation for 4 at a restaurant where appetizers cost more than my daily wage. Finally, he put the phone down. What is it, Nina? Nora, I corrected, something I'd done at least 20 times over my 15 months at Axion. I'm giving my 2 weeks' notice. I placed the letter on his desk. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he leaned back, studying me with something between amusement and annoyance. Let me guess. Meridian offered you something. Typical. They've always had poaching issues. He sighed dramatically. Look, we might be able to bump you to $14 an hour, but you have to understand, people with your background. I'm not going to Meridian, I interrupted. That got his attention. Then where? I've started my own company. He laughed. Not a chuckle. A full head-back laugh of genuine hilarity. As if I'd told the funniest joke he'd heard all year. Your own... He couldn't even finish the sentence. Nora, come on. Do you have any idea what it takes to run a tech company? The capital investment alone. I've secured funding, I said quietly. That stopped his laughter. What kind of funding? Enough. I wouldn't give him details. My last day will be the 15th. I'm happy to document all my projects and train whoever you assign to take them over. He was silent for a long moment, calculating. I could almost see the wheels turning. Finally, he sighed. Look, everyone gets frustrated sometimes. Why don't you take a few days off? Think things through. Starting a business is hard, especially for single parents without a support system. The condescension in his voice made something snap inside me. But I kept my expression neutral. My decision is final. I appreciate the opportunities Axion has provided. The corporate platitude tasted bitter on my tongue. As I turned to leave, he called after me, his voice suddenly harder. What's this company of yours going to do exactly? I paused at the door and looked back. You'll see. That afternoon, Garrett called an emergency meeting with the executive team. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see him gesturing angrily, occasionally pointing in my direction. The other developers gave me curious looks, but I kept coding as if nothing had changed. Over the next few days, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Garrett assigned his nephew to shadow me, obviously hoping to extract as much knowledge as possible before I left. The kid spent most of the time on his phone, occasionally asking questions that revealed how little he understood about what I'd built. 1 week into my notice period, I received a text from Elise Werner. Lunch tomorrow? My office. Important to discuss before things change. I replied with a simple, I'll be there. The next day, I told Garrett I had a doctor's appointment. He looked suspicious, but couldn't exactly deny me medical care. I took an Uber to Meridian's headquarters, a beautiful glass building downtown that made Axion's offices look shabby by comparison. Elise met me in the lobby herself, rather than sending an assistant. She led me not to a conference room, but to her private office on the top floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to a seating area where lunch was already laid out. Not extravagant, just fresh, healthy options. Consider it. Garrett called me yesterday, she continued, not wasting time on small talk. He was concerned that I might be planning to hire you. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He informed me that hiring you would constitute a hostile business action and could jeopardize our partnership with Axion. She picked up a water glass. Then he offered to reduce our rate by 15% if we signed a 3-year contract. And what did you say? I asked. I told him I'd think about it. She set down her glass. But what I really want to know is about this company you're starting. He seemed unusually rattled about it. I hesitated. This was the moment of truth. I'd brought my laptop, with the full Luma demo ready to go. But once I showed it to her, there would be no turning back. Before I show you, I said carefully, I need to be clear about something. I didn't build this to steal Axion's clients. I built it because I knew I could create something better. Elise nodded. Understood. I opened my laptop and pulled up Luma. For the next 30 minutes, I walked her through the platform, the streamlined workflow, the innovative security features, the intuitive interface Pia had designed. I showed her how it integrated with existing systems, how it anticipated user needs, how it solved problems Axion's platform didn't even acknowledge existed. When I finished, Elise was silent, her expression unreadable. Then she asked, one question. When can you deploy this for Meridian? My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. This wasn't how I'd planned things. I'd expected months of grinding to secure my first major client, not an immediate offer from a company the size of Meridian. 2 weeks, I heard myself say. I have the infrastructure ready, but I'd need time to migrate your data and customize certain elements. Elise nodded, then leaned forward. And your pricing structure? I named a figure that was 30% less than what Axion charged them, yet would still give me a healthy profit margin and allow me to pay my small team fairly. Done, she said, extending her hand. Send over the contracts this afternoon. I stared at her outstretched hand, suddenly terrified. This was really happening. Don't you need to discuss this with your board? Your IT department? Elise smiled. Not the practiced corporate smile I'd seen in her press photos, but something more genuine. Nora, I've spent 15 years in this industry watching brilliant women undersell themselves while mediocre men profit from their work. I'm the CEO. I make the technology decisions. She kept her hand extended. and I want to work with you." We shook hands, and something shifted in the universe. I felt it. A redistribution of power, a rebalancing. "There's one more thing," Elise said as we finished lunch. "Meridian represents about 40% of Axion's annual revenue. Garrett knows this. When he realizes you've taken us with you." She didn't finish the sentence. "He'll try to destroy me," I said simply. "Yes," she agreed. "Are you prepared for that?" I thought about all the nights I'd worked until my eyes burned, about Zara asking why mommy was always tired, about the time I'd had to choose between fixing my car's brakes and buying her asthma medication. "I've survived worse," I told Elise. When I returned to Axion that afternoon, Garrett was waiting by my desk, arms crossed. "Doctor appointment run long?" he asked, his tone making it clear he didn't believe me. "Traffic," I answered, sitting down and logging into my computer. "Funny thing," he continued, perching on the edge of my desk uninvited. "I called Meridian to discuss their contract renewal. Elise's assistant said she was in a meeting all afternoon. With a vendor." His eyes bored into me. "You wouldn't happen to know anything about that, would you?" I met his gaze steadily. "I'm not privy to Elise Werner's schedule." He studied me for a moment longer, then pushed off my desk. "Just remember, anything you developed while employed here belongs to Axion. Anything." He emphasized the word with a jab of his finger toward my face. "And I'll be damned if I let some community college dropout walk away with my intellectual property." I waited until he was halfway across the room before I spoke. "Actually, I did graduate." My voice was quiet, but carried in the suddenly silent office. "Summa cum laude. It's in my employment file. The one you obviously never read." His shoulders stiffened, but he didn't turn around. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. I finalized contracts with Meridian, secured our new office space, and mapped out a transition plan for my remaining week at Axion. I also backed up every email, every document, every piece of evidence showing that Luma was developed independently, on my own time, with my own resources. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Watch your back. G knows something's up. Cleaning house tomorrow." The next morning, I arrived at Axion to find security guards at the entrance. Malcolm, a senior developer who'd always been kind to me, was being escorted out, his decade of personal belongings stuffed into a cardboard box. "What's happening?" I asked Jenna from HR as she hurried past, looking flustered. "Organizational restructuring," she said without meeting my eyes. "Garrett will address everyone at 10. I went to my desk, heart pounding, and began downloading essential personal files. Around me, people were doing the same, the atmosphere thick with panic. By 9:45, 3 more developers had been escorted out. At 10 sharp, Garrett emerged from the executive suite, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits I'd never seen before. "As you may have heard, Axion is undergoing necessary changes to remain competitive," he announced to the tense room. "Unfortunately, that means eliminating positions that no longer align with our strategic vision." He read from a list. 10 names. When he finished, security guards moved toward those people. Mine wasn't among them, and the relief I felt was immediately followed by shame. "Those whose names were called, please gather your personal items and follow security. Your final paychecks will be mailed." Garrett's voice was mechanical. "The rest of you, there will be a mandatory team meeting at 2 p.m. to discuss the new direction of the company." As the shell-shocked employees were let out, I noticed a pattern. Every person on the list had been hired around the same time as me. Every person had been underpaid. And every person had, at some point, questioned Garrett's decisions. He was eliminating potential allies before coming for me. I spent the next hours in a fog, mechanically coding while planning my escape. The 2 p.m. meeting had to be a trap. But leaving early would only confirm his suspicions. At 1:30, my cell phone rang. Zara's school. "Miss Vargas?" Zara had an asthma attack during recess. She's stable, but she's asking for you. The school nurse's voice cut through everything else. I'll be right there. I grabbed my bag and rushed toward the exit, almost colliding with Garrett as he emerged from the elevator. Where are you going? He demanded. The meeting. My daughter's in the nurse's office, asthma attack. I tried to move past him. He blocked my path. We're in the middle of a company crisis. And you're leaving for a routine medical issue? Something inside me crystallized. In that moment, I saw him completely. Not as the intimidating boss I'd feared, but as the small, insecure man he truly was. Move, I said quietly. Excuse me? He blinked, unused to being challenged. My daughter can't breathe, move. For a moment, I thought he might actually physically restrain me. Then something in my expression must have warned him, because he stepped aside. Don't bother coming back, he called after me. I didn't look back. At the school, I found Zara sitting in the nurse's office, her breathing stabilized but her small face still frightened. When she saw me, she held out her arms. I got scared, Mommy. She whispered against my neck as I held her. I know, baby, but I'm here now. Over her head, I met the nurse's eyes. Thank you for calling me. Of course. The older woman hesitated. I tried your work number first, but they said you were no longer employed there. Ice shot through my veins. When was this? About 20 minutes ago. Even as I'd been walking out, Garrett had already been erasing me. I signed Zara out and took her home. While she napped, exhausted from the attack, I made calls. To my lawyer, to my small team, to Elise. He fired me, I explained. Or, I quit. It happened simultaneously. Are you all right? Elise asked, concern evident in her voice. Yes. And surprisingly, I was. But we need to move faster. Can you have your IT team available tomorrow? I want to migrate your systems before Garrett realizes what's happening. They'll be ready, she promised. And Nora? My offer to invest in Solaris Digital still stands. I meant what I said about supporting women entrepreneurs. I hadn't expected that. A powerful ally who saw my value not just as a service provider but as a business owner. The emotion caught in my throat. Thank you, I managed. That evening, as I tucked Zara into bed, my phone exploded with notifications. Emails, texts, voicemails, all from Axion employees, current and recently fired. Word had spread about my departure and Garrett's meltdown afterward. He completely lost it. Texted Rohit, a developer I'd trained. Started screaming about betrayal and intellectual property theft. Had security remove everything from your desk. Even took your coffee mug. From Malcolm. Heard you're starting something new. Whatever it is, I'm in. From Jenna in HR. Just overheard G on the phone with lawyers. They're planning to sue you for stealing their proprietary technology. Direct quote, I don't care what it costs. Destroy her. Please tell me you have protection. I did. My lawyer had ensured everything was airtight. I had documented every line of code written for Luma, all on my own time. I had witnesses who could testify that Axion had no similar technology in development. I had dated records showing Luma was conceived and built entirely separate from my Axion work. But legal protection wouldn't stop Garrett from trying to crush me. He had resources, connections, and a vindictive streak a mile wide. The next morning, I dropped Zara at school and headed to our small office above the coffee shop. Pia was already there, setting up workstations for the 2 additional developers we'd hired, both former Axion employees Garrett had fired yesterday. Ready for this? She asked, handing me coffee in a chipped mug with Boss Lady written on it. A gift from her daughter to mark the founding of Solaris Digital. No, I admitted. But we're doing it anyway. The next 12 hours were a blur of focused work. We migrated Meridian's entire system to Luma, troubleshooting in real time, supporting their employees through the transition. By midnight, it was done. Meridian was officially running on our platform. I drove home in a daze, equal parts exhausted and exhilarated. We'd done it. Launched our company, secured a major client, and completed our first successful deployment, all in the span of 48 hours. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. Unknown number. Is this Nora Vargas? An unfamiliar male voice. Yes, I answered cautiously. This is Daniel Kiernan from Venture Capital. Elise Werner suggested I call you. We're interested in discussing investment opportunities with Solaris Digital. I sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. Venture Capital was one of the largest tech investment firms in the country. I'm listening. We've reviewed the preliminary information Elise shared, and we're impressed with Luma's capabilities, particularly how it addresses pain points that Axion's platform has ignored for years. He paused. I understand you developed this independently? Completely. I confirmed. I can provide all documentation. Good. Because Garrett Pembroke is currently telling anyone who'll listen that you stole Axion's intellectual property, including our managing partner, during a rather awkward breakfast meeting this morning. My stomach dropped. And what did your managing partner say? Daniel chuckled. She asked to see Axion's patent filings for the technology Garrett claims you stole. There weren't any, of course. The relief was instant but short-lived. That won't stop him, I said. No, Daniel agreed. Which is why we'd like to meet as soon as possible. Today, if you're available. Having Venter's backing would make potential clients less nervous about Garrett's threats. We arranged to meet that afternoon. I called my neighbor to watch Zara after school and headed to our office to prepare with Pia and the team. I was reviewing our pitch deck when my lawyer called. Axion just filed suit, he said without preamble. They're alleging theft of trade secrets, breach of contract, and tortious interference with business relationships. Despite expecting this, the reality of being sued hit hard. What do we do? First, don't panic. Their case is weak. Second, send me all your documentation showing Luma's independent development. And third, his voice softened slightly. Prepare for this to get ugly. Garrett is painting you as a disgruntled employee who deliberately stole from the company that gave you a chance when no one else would. The familiar narrative made my blood boil. The ungrateful immigrant. The charity case. Who didn't know her place. Let me guess, I said bitterly. He's playing the victim? Poor successful businessman targeted by scheming former employee? Something like that. My lawyer confirmed. But we have truth on our side. And apparently, you have Elise Werner, which counts for a lot. After hanging up, I sat quietly, absorbing the reality. I was being sued. My fledgling company was under attack. The safe path would be to settle, to give Garrett something to satisfy his ego, to make the problem go away. But that would mean admitting I'd done something wrong, that I had something to apologize for, and I didn't. When I arrived at Venture Capital's offices that afternoon, I was surprised to find not just Daniel waiting, but Elise as well, along with 4 other people representatives from companies I recognized as Axion clients. Hope you don't mind the expanded audience, Daniel said, shaking my hand. Word has spread about Luma, and these folks were interested in seeing what prompted Garrett's rather spectacular meltdown at the Chamber of Commerce lunch today. Elise elaborated. He accused me publicly of corporate espionage for working with you, then threatened everyone in the room with legal action if they so much as took a meeting with Solaris Digital. She smiled tightly. It had the opposite effect of what he intended. Nothing makes CEOs more curious than being told they're not allowed to look at something. For the next 2 hours, I demonstrated Luma, answering technical questions and outlining our vision for the platform. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then one by one, they began to speak. We've been unhappy with Axion for years, said a woman from a healthcare company. But there weren't alternatives that met our security requirements. Until now. Garrett promised us an updated platform 18 months ago, added a man from a manufacturing firm. We're still waiting, and still paying premium rates for outdated technology. By the end of the meeting, 2 companies had scheduled migrations to Luma. Venture capital offered investment terms that made my head spin. And most surprisingly, a major tech publication wanted to interview me about the next big disruption in enterprise software. As we were leaving, Elise pulled me aside. Garrett just called an emergency board meeting at Axion, she told me. One of their board members texted me. Apparently, they just found out that along with Meridian, 3 other major clients are considering leaving. Because of Luma? I asked. Because of you, she corrected. Your story is resonating. The undervalued employee who built something better while being paid poverty wages. It's hitting a nerve, especially with other companies worried about their own talented employees walking out the door. The next week passed in a surreal blur. Our tiny office became command central as we brought on more staff. Many of them, former Axion employees. We migrated 2 more clients to Luma. The investment from venture capital allowed us to lease proper office space and upgrade our infrastructure. Meanwhile, Axion's lawsuit progressed. My lawyer filed our response, complete with exhaustive documentation proving Luma's independent development. 3 former Axion executives submitted affidavits confirming the company had no similar technology in development and that Garrett had, in fact, rejected proposals for such improvements as unnecessary expenses. Then came the article. The tech publication's piece about Solaris Digital went viral, picked up by mainstream business outlets. The headline said it all. Underpaid developer builds better system at night, takes clients with her when former employer refuses raise. The story detailed my journey from $12 an hour developer to founder and CEO, contrasting my working conditions at Axion with Garrett's lifestyle. Someone had leaked his email about my immigrant kid syndrome and lack of leverage, which featured prominently in the article. Public opinion swung decisively in my favor. Pay your developers started trending. Other undervalued tech workers began sharing their stories. The conversation about exploitation in the industry exploded. Garrett, predictably, didn't take it well. He gave a disastrous interview where he defended paying me $12 an hour while billing $300 for my time as standard industry practice and suggested I should have been grateful for the opportunity. The backlash was immediate and fierce. 3 weeks after I walked out of Axion, I received an unexpected email from Jenna in HR. Board meeting just ended. G was suspended pending investigation into company practices. They're bringing in interim management. Thought you should know. That same day, my lawyer called with news. Axion wanted to settle the lawsuit. Their conditions? We would acknowledge they had no legitimate claim. They would issue a public apology. And, most surprisingly, they would pay damages for defamation. They're cutting Garrett loose, my lawyer explained. The board saw the writing on the wall. The publicity was killing them. Clients were fleeing, and their own legal team admitted the case was unwinnable. I sat in our new office, a real office with actual working air conditioning and chairs that didn't wobble, and tried to process how completely my life had changed in under a month. What do you want to do? Pia asked quietly. She'd been with me from the beginning, working at my kitchen table when Luma was just an idea born of desperation and rage. What did I want? Revenge had stopped being my primary motivation somewhere along the way. What drove me now was building something that reflected my values: fair compensation, respect for people's time and talent, technology that actually solved problems instead of creating new ones. I want to accept the settlement, I decided, but with one condition. 2 days later, I sat across from Axion's board of directors minus Garrett, who was conspicuously absent. The interim CEO, A woman named Margot, with decades of industry experience, led the discussion. "We accept your condition," she said finally. "Though it's unusual." So was paying a senior developer $12 an hour, while billing clients $300 for her time. I replied evenly. My condition had been simple. As part of the settlement, Axion would engage a third-party firm to review all employee compensation, correct any disparities, and provide back pay where appropriate. They would also implement transparent salary bands and eliminate the practice of forbidding employees from discussing their compensation. As I stood to leave, Margot asked one last question. "Why this condition? You could have asked for more money, more favorable terms for Solaris. Why focus on Axion's current employees?" I thought about all the Noras still out there, still undervalued, still afraid to speak up. "Because change has to start somewhere," I said simply. 6 months later, Solaris Digital had grown to 30 employees. We'd moved to a larger office in a building downtown. Not ostentatious, but comfortable, with a daycare center on the first floor where Zara spent her afternoons after school, often visiting my office to draw pictures at the small desk I'd set up for her. Our client list had expanded to include companies that had previously been exclusive to Axion. Luma was recognized as the most innovative platform in its class, with features our competitors scrambled to copy. Garrett had resigned to pursue other opportunities, according to Axion's press release. Industry gossip suggested no tech company would touch him, his reputation permanently damaged by the scandal and his handling of it. Last I heard, he was trying to rebrand himself as a business consultant in another state. Axion itself had survived, under new leadership that implemented the changes we'd demanded. Former colleagues told me the company culture had transformed, with transparent compensation and proper recognition of contributions. As for me, I paid off my student loans, moved Zara to an apartment where she had her own bedroom, started a college fund for her, and most importantly, created a company where people were valued for their contributions, not exploited for their vulnerabilities. Sometimes I think about that accidental email, the one where Garrett dismissed me as having classic hungry immigrant kid syndrome without leverage to negotiate. He'd been right about one thing. I was hungry, but not just for money or success. I was hungry for dignity, for recognition of my worth, for the opportunity to build something that reflected my values rather than someone else's greed. And that's exactly what I did. If you're watching this and you're being undervalued, remember, your worth isn't determined by what someone is willing to pay you. It's in what you can create, in the problems you can solve, in the vision you bring to the world. Have you ever been undervalued at work? What did you do about it? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if my story resonated with you, please subscribe to this channel. I share new experiences about business, technology, and finding your worth in a world that often tries to minimize it. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's creation. Building something so undeniably excellent that those who underestimated you are forced to watch your success from the sidelines. He never loved you, Abby. Not the way he loved me. I was his escape, his real life. You were just convenient. Gina stood in her living room, bouncing her 1-year-old son on her hip. The birthday party guests shifted uncomfortably, conversations dying as she raised her voice. "Tyler has his eyes, don't you think? His father's eyes." I felt the room spinning as 40 people, coworkers, neighbors, friends, watched me crumble. My husband had been dead for exactly 17 days. Mark wanted his son to have what was rightfully his, Gina continued, reaching into the diaper bag slung over her shoulder. She pulled out a folded document, thrusting it toward me with manicured fingers. His will. He signed it 3 months ago when he found out I was pregnant. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Legal language swam before my eyes, but certain phrases stood out in stark relief. To my son, Tyler, half ownership of the property at 1542 Pinecrest Road, valued at approximately $800,000. I didn't want to do this today, Gina said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. But I thought it would be easier with everyone here to support you. I'm only asking for what belongs to Tyler. Someone gasped. A glass shattered somewhere behind me. We can be reasonable about this, she continued. You can keep living there while we sort out the details. I'll need the master bedroom, of course, and we'll have to convert your home office for Tyler's nursery. The party guests were statues now, watching this car crash in slow motion. I looked around at their faces. Horror, pity, morbid fascination. These were people I'd worked with for years. My neighbors, people who'd attended Mark's funeral, hugged me, brought casseroles to my door, and now they were witnessing my complete humiliation. I'm sure this is a shock, Gina said, adjusting Tyler on her hip. Finding out your husband had another life, another love. She smiled, a small, victorious curve of her lips. But Mark always said you were understanding, reasonable. He said that's why he married you in the first place. The document in my hands suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The world narrowed to a pinpoint, and for a moment, I thought I might actually collapse. But something else was bubbling up beneath the shock, something that made me bite the inside of my cheek to keep from letting it show. I handed the will back to her, my face carefully blank. I see, I said quietly. Then I turned and walked out of the party without another word. No one followed me. The things people do for money, for revenge, for power, ever incredible, aren't they? If you've ever been blindsided by betrayal, hit that like button. If you've ever had to swallow your words while planning something bigger, subscribe now. And if you're wondering what happened next, keep listening. Because what Gina didn't know about me, about Mark, and about that house would change everything. My name is Abigail Preston. Abby to my friends, which suddenly seemed a much smaller circle than I'd thought. I'm 34 years old, a senior account manager at Brighton Marketing, and 17 days ago, I became a widow. And now, apparently, I was sharing my home with my husband's mistress and their child. Except I wasn't. Not by a long shot. I drove home from the party in complete silence. No radio, no phone calls, nothing but the sound of my own breathing. The sprawling craftsman house came into view as I rounded the corner. My house, with its wide porch and the maple tree I'd planted when I first moved in. 7 years ago, before I even met Mark, the house I'd bought with my inheritance when my grandparents died. The house that had only my name on the deed. I walked inside, kicked off my heels, and poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon. Then I started to laugh. It began as a chuckle, grew into a full laugh, and eventually became something close to hysteria. I laughed until tears streamed down my face and my stomach hurt, because Gina had no idea who she was dealing with. I met Mark Preston at a charity auction 4 years ago. He was charming, successful, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. We dated for 8 months before he proposed. The wedding was small, just 50 guests at a local vineyard. We honeymooned in Portugal. Life was good. Mark moved into my house after the wedding. We discussed putting his name on the deed, but I hesitated. Not because I didn't trust him, but because the house was my safety net. My grandparents had raised me after my parents died, and this house was my connection to them. My independence. Mark said he understood. Our marriage wasn't perfect. I haven't been. Whose is? But it was good. At least I thought so. He traveled often for work, sometimes gone for a week at a time. I focused on my career, working my way up from junior copywriter to senior account manager. We talked about having children someday, but agreed to wait until we were more settled. Then, 6 months ago, Mark started acting differently. He was distracted, irritable. Our conversations became shorter, more functional. He started working late, traveling more. When I asked if something was wrong, he blamed stress at work. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him. 3 months ago, Mark died in a car accident. He was driving home late from work when his car went off the road and hit a tree. The police said he hadn't been drinking. Just tired. Maybe. A moment's inattention. That's all it takes. The funeral was a blur. I remember standing in the cemetery, watching them lower his casket, feeling hollow. Gina was there. She worked in our accounting department. I remembered thinking how kind it was that so many coworkers had come. She'd hugged me, told me how sorry she was, never mentioned a baby, never mentioned that she'd been sleeping with my husband, and now this. A first birthday party that became my public execution. My phone buzzed with a text from Amelia, my closest friend at work. "Are you okay?" That was insane. "Call me." I didn't respond. Instead, I went to my home office and pulled out our financial records. Mark and I had separate accounts and one joint account for household expenses. We split everything. 50-50, despite the fact that I earned more. I checked our credit card statements, bank records, everything, looking for traces of Gina, of secret gifts, hotel rooms, anything that would confirm her story. Nothing jumped out at me, but Mark had been careful. He always was. The bourbon burned pleasantly as I swallowed another sip. A plan was forming in my mind, not a confrontation. That would be too easy, too expected. No, something more intricate. Something that would give me answers while letting Gina dig her own grave. My phone rang. Amelia again. This time I answered. "What the actual hell was that?" she demanded without preamble. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm going to find out. Do you think it's true?" "About Mark and the baby?" I stared out the window at the darkening sky. "I don't know that either. But the will is fake. How can you be sure? Because the house is mine, just mine. Mark's name isn't on anything." I paused. "And there's no way he wrote a will without telling me." Silence on the other end. Then, "So, what are you going to do?" I took another sip of bourbon. "Nothing. Yet." "Nothing?" "Abby, she just humiliated you in front of everyone we work with. She's claiming half your house." "I know, and she'll regret it." I set down my glass. "But first, I need to understand what game she's playing. Why now? Why like this? Because she's an opportunistic snake? Maybe. Or maybe there's something else going on." I thought for a moment. "Did you know she was pregnant before today?" Amelia hesitated. "I heard rumors. She was on leave for a few months. Came back about 6 weeks ago. But I never saw her with a baby before today." Interesting. I hadn't been paying much attention to office gossip in the months before Mark's death. And after, well, I'd taken bereavement leave. Only been back at work for a week. "Abby," Amelia said hesitantly, "what if the baby is Mark's?" The question hung in the air between us. What if? What if my husband had been living a double life? What if he'd fathered a child with another woman while married to me? What if he'd been planning to leave me? "Then I'll deal with that too," I said finally. "But first, I need to know the truth. All of it." After hanging up, I poured another drink and went upstairs to our bedroom. Bedroom now. I opened Mark's closet, still full of his clothes. I hadn't been able to go through them yet. The familiar scent of his cologne hit me. And for a moment, grief overwhelmed everything else. I sat on the floor, surrounded by his things, and let myself cry, for the man I thought I knew, for the life I thought we had, for the future that was gone. When the tears finally stopped, I began to search. Not just his clothes, but every pocket, every hidden corner. In the inside pocket of his winter coat, I found a small key I didn't recognize. In his bedside table, beneath a stack of magazines, a prepaid phone I'd never seen before. And in his home office, hidden in a hollowed-out business book, a small notebook filled with his handwriting. As I flipped through the pages, my heart pounded harder. Dates, times, short notes, and a name that appeared again and again, Gina. My hands trembled as I leafed through the notebook, page after page of Mark's neat handwriting, documenting meetings with Gina stretching back 14 months, coffee shops, restaurants, hotel rooms, sometimes just times and places, sometimes brief notes, G worried about work finding out. G wants more time together. G pushing for commitment. O, the last entry was dated just 2 weeks before his death. Told G about baby. Complicated now. I sank into his desk chair, the notebook heavy in my hands. So it was true. Or at least part of it was true. Mark and Gina had been involved. The baby might really be his. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. A physical pain that radiated through my chest. But something still wasn't adding up. If Mark knew about the baby, why hadn't he said anything to me? And this will Gina was flashing around. Where had that come from? The prepaid phone I'd found was dead. I plugged it in, hands shaking as I waited for it to power on. No password required, just a list of text messages and calls, all to and from the same number. Gina's, presumably. I scrolled through the messages, each one another knife to my heart. Miss you already, she'd written. Last night was amazing, he'd replied. I forced myself to keep reading, to absorb every painful detail. The most recent messages, from 3 weeks before his death, showed a different tone. Gina, we need to talk about what happens next. I can't keep this secret much longer. Mark. I know. I'm trying to figure things out. Gina. What's there to figure out? You said you'd leave her. I'm going to say, Mark, it's complicated. Gina. The baby isn't complicated. He deserves his father. Mark. I'm not ready for this conversation over text. We'll talk in person. The final message from Gina, sent the day before his accident. I'm done waiting. Either you tell her, or I will. I sat in the growing darkness, connecting the dots. Had Mark been planning to leave me? Or had Gina pressured him into a corner he couldn't escape? And this will... Where did that fit in? My phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender, Gina Hamilton. Subject, moving forward. Abby, it read. I understand today was a shock, and I apologize for the public nature of our conversation. I thought having people around might make it easier for you. I was clearly wrong. I hope you've had time to review Mark's will. I've scheduled a meeting with my attorney next week to discuss the transfer of property. I'm willing to be reasonable about the timeline. I understand you need time to process everything. For Tyler's sake, I hope we can handle this amicably. Mark always spoke highly of your rationality. He said it was what he respected most about you. I'll be by tomorrow at 2 p.m. to discuss next steps and see the property. As you can imagine, I need to plan for my son's future. With sympathy, Gina. The audacity was breathtaking. She'd humiliated me publicly, claimed my husband had fathered her child, presented a suspicious will demanding half my house, and now expected me to welcome her with open arms. I almost admired her confidence. I didn't respond to the email. Instead, I called my own attorney, Patricia Chen, and left a message explaining the situation. Then I took the notebook, the phone, and the key and locked them in my safe. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake, replaying moments from my marriage, searching for signs I'd missed. Had Mark really been unhappy? Had I been so absorbed in my own work that I'd failed to notice him slipping away? Or had he simply been a liar, skilled at leading a double life? Morning brought no clarity, but it did bring determination. If Gina wanted to play games, she'd discover I was a formidable opponent. But first, I needed more information. I showered, dressed carefully in a blue dress that made my eyes look sharper, and drove to the office. It was Saturday, but I knew a few people would be there, catching up on work, including, I hoped, Owen from HR, who owed me a favor. The office was quiet, just a handful of cars in the parking lot. I found Owen in the break room, pouring himself coffee. Abby! He looked startled. I didn't expect to see you today, especially after. He trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. After my husband's mistress announced her paternity claim at a birthday party? Yes. Well, life goes on. I kept my voice light, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Actually, I could use your help with something. Owen shifted nervously. I don't know if I should get involved in personnel records, I interrupted. I need to know when Gina took her maternity leave. For legal purposes. For legal purposes. He hesitated. That's confidential information, Abby. You know I can't. Remember last year when you accidentally sent that inappropriate email to the entire company instead of your girlfriend? I took a sip of coffee. And I helped you convince IT it was a system glitch before anyone in leadership saw it. Owen's face reddened. That's not the same thing, isn't it? I'm not asking for her medical records, Owen. Just dates. When she went on leave, when she returned. That's all. He sighed, shoulders slumping. Fine. Give me a minute. 10 minutes later, I had what I needed. Gina had taken leave from November 15th to February 28th. If her son just turned 1, that meant he was born in early June, which meant conception would have been around September the previous year. I thanked Owen and left quickly, mind racing. September. Mark and I had gone to his brother's wedding in September. We'd spent a week in California. Together. The entire time, something wasn't adding up. My next stop was the county records office. I needed to confirm what I already knew, that the house was solely in my name, and see if Mark had actually filed a will. The clerk was helpful, if slow, and an hour later I had copies of my deed, sole owner, Abigail Preston, and confirmation that no will had been filed for Mark Preston. I made one more stop before heading home, a locksmith. The small key I'd found in Mark's coat. I needed to know what it opened. The older man examined it carefully. Safety deposit box, he said confidently. Standard size. You'll need to know which bank, though. I thanked him and left, adding this new puzzle piece to my mental board. A safety deposit box. Mark had never mentioned having one. What was he hiding? When I pulled into my driveway at 1:45, Gina's red SUV was already parked at the curb. She stood on my porch, bouncing Tyler gently in her arms. She'd dressed for the occasion, sleek black pants, emerald blouse, hair perfectly styled. The picture of a grieving lover ready to claim her inheritance. You're early, I said, unlocking the door. I was excited to see the place. She replied, following me inside. Mark described it so often. I feel like I already know every room. I doubted that very much, but I kept my expression neutral. Would you like some tea? That would be lovely. She followed me to the kitchen, looking around with unconcealed interest. This is even nicer than the photos Mark showed me. I filled the kettle, watching her from the corner of my eye. She moved with confidence, setting Tyler down on a blanket she spread on my kitchen floor. The baby gurgled happily, reaching for toys she pulled from her bag. He has Mark's smile, she said, catching me looking. Don't you think? I studied the child. Round cheeks, dark hair, bright eyes. Maybe there was a resemblance, or maybe I was seeing what she wanted me to see. I'm not sure, I said honestly. Gina sighed dramatically. I know this is hard for you, finding out your husband had another life, another family. Is that what you were, his family? We were going to be. She straightened, meeting my eyes directly. Mark was planning to leave you. He just ran out of time. The kettle whistled, giving me a moment to compose myself. I poured hot water over tea bags, set a cup in front of her. Tell me about the will, I said, sitting across from her. When did Mark have it drawn up? Gina reached into her purse, pulled out the document she'd shown me at the party. 3 months before he died, when I told him I was pregnant, I took the paper, examined it more carefully this time. It looked professional, legal language, official seeming stamps. Mark's signature at the bottom did look like his, but there were details that felt off. The attorney's name, James Whitman, wasn't familiar, and there was a reference to our cabin in Vermont that we definitely didn't own. I was surprised when he told me about this, I said casually, handing the document back. We discussed wills before, but Mark always put it off. Said we were too young to worry about dying. Gina's smile tightened slightly. Becoming a father changes a man's perspective. I suppose it would. I sipped my tea. You mentioned an attorney? For the property transfer? Yes, Mark's attorney, actually. James Whitman. He drew up the will. Interesting. The same name on the document. I'd like to speak with him directly. Of course. I'll set up a meeting next week. Gina glanced around the kitchen again. Mark said, this place has 4 bedrooms? 3, plus my office. Perfect. Tyler will need his own room, of course. And I was thinking the master bedroom. It's blessed. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I interrupted, my voice sharp despite my best efforts. There are legal issues to sort through first. Gina's expression hardened slightly. The will is quite clear, Abby. Half of this house belongs to Tyler. To me, as his guardian. The will may say that. But there's a problem. I met her gaze steadily. Mark couldn't leave what wasn't his to give. This house is solely in my name. I bought it before we married. It was never part of our marital assets. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. That's not what Mark told me. Mark told you a lot of things, apparently. I stood up. Would you like to see the deed? The mortgage documents? All with only my signature. Gina recovered quickly, her confident smile returning. That's a minor complication. As Mark's widow, you're obligated to provide for his son. Any court would agree. Perhaps. But we'd need proof that Tyler is indeed Mark's son. I kept my voice gentle, aware of the baby playing at our feet. DNA testing is standard in these cases. A flash of something... panic? Crossed her features before she masked it. Of course. I have nothing to hide. Good. I smiled thinly. Neither do I. Gina stayed for another 30 minutes, walking through my home like she already owned it, making comments about changes she'd make. I maintained a calm facade, letting her talk herself into a deeper hole with every presumptuous statement. As she was leaving, she paused at the door. Mark always said you were reasonable, that you'd understand if you knew the truth. That's why I approached you this way, directly, honestly. The irony was almost too much. Did he? How considerate of him. We don't have to be enemies, Abby. We both loved the same man. I looked at her. This woman who'd slept with my husband, who was now trying to take my home, who'd humiliated me publicly. Did we, though? I'm starting to wonder if either of us knew him at all. After she left, I sat on my porch steps, watching her drive away. The confrontation had confirmed what I already suspected. The will was fake. Gina was lying. About something. Maybe everything. But why? What was her real game? My phone rang. Patricia, my attorney, returning my call. I explained the situation, sent her photos of the will Gina had shown me. This is concerning, Patricia said after reviewing everything. If she's presenting a fraudulent will, that's criminal. But we need to be careful how we proceed. What do you recommend? Don't confront her directly yet. Let her think you're considering her claims while we investigate. I'll look into this attorney, James Whitman, and we should discuss a restraining order if she continues to show up unannounced. After hanging up, I went back to Mark's notebook, rereading entries, looking for clues. The dates aligned with his business trips, with late nights at the office. He'd been methodical in his deception, but something still bothered me about the timeline. If Tyler had just turned 1, and Gina had taken leave from November to February, when exactly had she given birth? And why would Mark need to be told about the baby just 2 weeks before his death if he'd known about the pregnancy for months? I pulled out a calendar, started marking dates. Mark's trips, Gina's leave, Tyler's birthday. The more I mapped it out, the less sense it made, unless a horrible suspicion began forming in my mind. I needed more information, more evidence. But if I was right, if what I was beginning to suspect was true, then Gina's deception went far beyond a fake will or a claim on my house. It was something much darker, something worth destroying lives for. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. It rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. Dante Investigations. Carlos, it's Abby Preston. I need your help with something delicate. I need everything you can find on Gina Hamilton, I told Carlos. employment history, financial records, personal background, and I need it quickly. Sounds serious, he replied. What's this about? She claims my late husband fathered her child and left her half my house in his will. I think she's lying about, well, possibly everything. Carlos whistled low. That's cold. I'll start digging today. One more thing, I added. I found a key to what might be a safety deposit box. Can you help me figure out which bank? That'll take longer. Banks don't exactly advertise their clients' private boxes. Try First National downtown first, I suggested. Mark did his business banking there. After hanging up, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the space where Gina had spread her blanket, where Tyler had played on my floor. The baby seemed innocent enough, but was he Mark's? Was he even hers? The next day was Sunday. I drove to my mother-in-law's house, heart heavy with what I needed to ask her. Eleanor had been devastated by Mark's death. Eleanor losing her only son just 3 years after becoming a widow herself. I hadn't told her about Gina's claims yet, not wanting to add to her grief. Eleanor welcomed me with a warm hug. At 68, she was still elegant and sharp, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob. We sat in her sunroom, drinking tea from her good china, a ritual she maintained no matter the occasion. You look troubled, dear, she said, studying my face. More than usual, I mean. I took a deep breath. Eleanor, did Mark ever mention someone named Gina to you? A woman from work? She frowned slightly. I don't believe so. Why? She came to see me yesterday, she says. The words stuck in my throat. She says Mark was the father of her child, a 1-year-old boy named Tyler. Eleanor's teacup clattered against its saucer. That's ridiculous. Mark would have told me if I had a grandchild. I thought so too, but she has evidence, and the timing could work. What evidence? Eleanor's voice had hardened, protective of her son's memory. I hesitated. Messages, dates, and a will that leaves half my house to her son. A will? She shook her head firmly. Mark didn't have a will. I asked him about it after Bernard died. He said you two hadn't gotten around to it yet. That confirmed what I'd already suspected. The will mentions a cabin in Vermont. Did Mark ever talk about buying property there? Vermont? No, never. Eleanor set down her cup. Mark hated the cold. Why would he buy property somewhere with worse winters than here? Another nail in the coffin of Gina's story. There's something else I wanted to ask you, I said carefully. Did Mark ever mention having a safety deposit box? I found a key. Eleanor's expression changed subtly. He did, actually. After his father died, Bernard kept important documents in one, and Mark thought it was a good idea. I believe it was at First National. My pulse quickened. Did he mention what he kept there? Insurance policies, I think. Maybe some family heirlooms. She paused. I could go with you, if you'd like. The bank might be more cooperative if I'm there. Mark was always close to that manager. What was his name? David something. David Chen, I supplied. That would be helpful, thank you. As I was leaving, Eleanor grabbed my hand. Abby, this woman, what does she want? Money, I said simply. Or at least, that's what she says she wants. Eleanor's grip tightened. Don't let her tarnish Mark's memory with lies. Whatever the truth is, find it. Monday morning arrived with a text from Carlos. Found something interesting. Can you meet at 11? I told my boss I had an appointment and left the office at 10:30, carefully avoiding the accounting department where Gina worked. Carlos was waiting at a cafe 2 blocks away, a manila folder on the table in front of him. That was fast, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. You're paying my rush fee, he reminded me with a half smile. And your Gina Hamilton is interesting. How so? He opened the folder, revealing printouts of documents, photos, and notes in his messy handwriting. For starters, she's only been Gina Hamilton for 3 years. Before that, she was Gina Harper. Name change after a divorce. Normal enough. But before that, Regina Woodson from Telluride, Colorado. Multiple name changes and multiple jobs. Never stays anywhere longer than 2 years. always in accounting or finance, always at mid-sized firms where she has access to money but isn't under too much scrutiny. A chill ran down my spine. Are you saying she's some kind of con artist? I'm saying she has a pattern. And it gets better. He slid a photo across the table. It showed Gina, hair dyed blonde, standing beside a gray-haired man in front of a lake house. This was taken 4 years ago in Michigan. The man is Harold Brennan, CFO of a manufacturing company where she worked as an accounting manager. 63 years old, wealthy, recently widowed. I studied the photo. They were standing close, his arm around her waist. Were they involved? Engaged, according to local news. He died 2 months before the wedding. Heart attack. Carlos raised an eyebrow. His children contested the will, which left a significant portion of his estate to his beloved fiancée, Gina, but ultimately settled out of court. My mouth went dry. You think she? I'm not suggesting murder, Carlos said quickly, just noting a pattern of targeting vulnerable men with money, then benefiting from their deaths or divorces. He pulled out another document. 3 months after Brennan's death, she moved here and started working at your company. 6 months later, she met your husband. I sat back, mind racing. What about the baby, Tyler? Carlos hesitated. That's where it gets complicated. I haven't found birth records for a Tyler Hamilton or Harper in any local hospital. What are you saying? I'm saying either she gave birth somewhere else or Tyler isn't her child. I finished, the horrible suspicion I'd had earlier returning with force. Carlos nodded grimly. I'm still looking into it, but given her history, I wouldn't put anything past her. I left the cafe with my head spinning, Carlos's folder tucked into my bag. If Gina was a con artist who targeted wealthy men, had Mark been her latest victim? Had he discovered her scheme? Was that why he died? The thought made my blood run cold. I'd been assuming Mark's death was an accident. What if it wasn't? I picked up Eleanor at 2 p.m., and we drove to First National Bank together. David Chen greeted us warmly, his expression softening with sympathy when Eleanor explained why we were there. Of course, Mrs. Preston. We'll need to verify your status as next of kin, but that shouldn't be a problem. He led us to a private office, where Eleanor produced Mark's death certificate and their family documents. 20 minutes later, we were escorted to the vault. The safety deposit box opened with a combination of my key and the bank's master key, revealing a stack of documents and a small velvet pouch. I lifted out the papers first. Insurance policies, as Eleanor had mentioned, our marriage certificate, and underneath it all, a sealed envelope with my name written on it in Mark's handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I'd like to read this privately, if you don't mind, I told Eleanor and David. They stepped outside the small viewing room, leaving me alone with Mark's final message to me. I broke the seal carefully and unfolded the letter inside. Abby, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope it's decades from now, when we're old and gray. But if not, there are things you need to know. My heart pounded as I read on. I've made a terrible mistake. There's a woman at work, Gina Hamilton. We had a brief relationship last year. It meant nothing to me. A stupid moment of weakness during a business trip. I ended it immediately, but she's become unstable. She's threatened to tell everyone, that we're still involved. She wants money. At first I paid her, small amounts to keep her quiet, but her demands have grown. Now she's claiming to be pregnant with my child, which is impossible. We were only together once, over a year ago. I've been gathering evidence of her extortion, bank transfers, emails, recordings of our conversations. It's all in a flash drive in the velvet pouch. I'm meeting with a lawyer next week to discuss a restraining order. I'm so sorry, Abby. I never meant to hurt you. Whatever happens, know that I love you. You're the only one I've ever truly loved. Forgive me, Mark. I sat motionless, tears streaming down my face. The letter was dated 2 days before his accident, before his death. With shaking hands, I opened the velvet pouch and found a small flash drive. I slipped it and the letter into my purse, then called Eleanor back in. Are you all right? she asked, seeing my tear-streaked face. I will be, I promised. Let's take these documents and go. That night, alone in my home office, I plugged the flash drive into my computer. It contained exactly what Mark had described: evidence of Gina's extortion, email threads where she demanded money, voice recordings where she threatened to ruin him if he didn't pay, bank statements showing transfers to an account in her name. In the final recording, dated just 3 days before his death, her voice was cold and calculating. You think you can just pay me off and I'll disappear? It doesn't work that way, Mark. I own you now. And if you don't give me what I want, I'll destroy everything you care about. Your marriage, your career, your perfect little life. By the time I'm done, Abby will hate you, your mother will disown you, and you'll be lucky if you're not in jail. Mark's voice, strained but determined. This ends now, Gina. I've documented everything. The payments, the threats. I'm going to the police. Her laugh sent chills down my spine. With what evidence? Your word against mine? I'll tell them you've been stalking me, harassing me. I'll show them the gifts you gave me, the messages you sent. Who do you think they'll believe? The married executive or the poor single woman just trying to do her job? I have recordings, bank records. Recordings can be edited, payments can be explained. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Mark. I've destroyed better men than you. The recording ended there. I sat in the dark, staring at my screen, a cold rage building inside me. This woman had tormented my husband, possibly driven him to his death, and now was trying to steal my home using a child that might not even be hers as leverage. It was time to end her game. Tuesday morning, I called Patricia and sent her copies of everything I'd found. Then I contacted Carlos with new instructions. By afternoon, I had a plan. I waited until Wednesday to confront Gina. I found her in the office kitchen, alone, fixing herself tea. We need to talk, I said quietly, about the will, about Tyler. She turned, her practiced sympathetic expression sliding into place. Of course. I know this is difficult. Not here, I interrupted. My house. Tonight at 7. I can do that. She smiled, confident. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this, Abby. Oh, I'm being very reasonable, I assured her. See you tonight. At 6:45, I was ready. Patricia sat in my living room, documents spread across the coffee table. Carlos waited in the kitchen, out of sight. Eleanor had insisted on being there too, sitting rigidly on my sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. I took a deep breath and opened it to find Gina standing there, alone. No Tyler tonight? I asked as I led her to the living room. He's with a sitter. I thought this might be tense. She stopped short when she saw Patricia and Eleanor. I didn't realize this would be a group meeting. Please sit down, I said, gesturing to an armchair facing the three of us. This is Patricia Chen, my attorney. And you know Eleanor, Mark's mother. Gina sat stiffly, her confident smile faltering slightly. Is this really necessary? I thought we could discuss this amicably. Oh, I'm very interested in being amicable, I said, my voice deadly calm. Let's start with your real name. Is it Gina Hamilton? Gina Harper? Or Regina Woodson? Her face paled, but she recovered quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. I changed my name after my divorce, that's all. And before that, in Michigan, with Harold Brennan, I placed the photo Carlos had found on the table between us. He died rather suddenly, didn't he? Just before your wedding. This is ridiculous, she snapped. What does any of this have to do with Mark's will? The will is fake, Patricia interjected calmly. We've confirmed that no such document was ever filed, and the attorney who supposedly drafted it, James Whitman, doesn't exist in any bar association registry in this state. Gina's eyes darted between us. Mark gave me that will. If it's not official, that's not my fault. Mark didn't give you anything, I said, pulling out his letter. He wrote this 2 days before he died. Would you like me to read it aloud? I don't know what game you're playing. It's not a game, Eleanor cut in, her voice shaking with anger. You're trying to use my son's death for your own gain, claiming a child he never fathered. Tyler is Mark's son, Gina insisted, but her voice had lost its conviction. Where was Tyler born, Gina? I asked quietly. Which hospital? Because we can't find any birth records for him. Not here, not in Michigan, not in Colorado. Her hands clenched in her lap. This is harassment. I'm leaving. Before you do, I said. You should know that everything Mark recorded, your threats, your extortion, has been given to the police. And Carlos here, I nodded toward the kitchen where he now stood, has provided them with quite an interesting history of your activities in other states. Gina stood abruptly. You can't prove anything. Maybe not everything, I conceded. But enough. Enough to launch an investigation. Enough to question your custody of Tyler. In her way, who, by the way, looks remarkably similar to a baby reported missing from a Denver hospital 14 months ago. The color drained completely from her face. That's a lie. Is it? The police seem very interested in testing Tyler's DNA. This was a bluff. Carlos had found similarities in news reports, but nothing conclusive. Yet, Gina grabbed her purse. I'm not listening to this. You're just a bitter widow who can't accept that her husband loved someone else. Mark didn't love you, I said, rising to face her. He was afraid of you. And with good reason, apparently. She lunged forward suddenly, reaching for Mark's letter on the table. I stepped between her and the documents as Carlos moved quickly from the kitchen. In the confusion, Gina's purse fell open, spilling its contents across my floor. Among the scattered items was a small amber prescription bottle. I picked it up before she could grab it. Propranolol, I read aloud, looking at the label. Isn't this a heart medication? The same kind Harold Brennan was taking before his heart attack? Gina snatched the bottle from my hand. It's for anxiety. Give me my things. But I'd seen enough. The prescription wasn't in her name. It was for Mark Preston. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Mark's unexpected heart failure during what should have been a minor accident. The missing medication from his nightstand that I'd attributed to first responders or hospital staff. You killed him? I whispered, the realization like ice in my veins. You tampered with his medication. And then, when he threatened to expose you, you made sure he had an accident. That's insane, she hissed. But her eyes were wild now, darting toward the door. You can't prove any of this. Maybe not today. I agreed. But the police are very thorough once they start looking. And they're already looking, Gina. She backed toward the door. This isn't over. Actually, I said, it is. As she fled, Patricia picked up her phone. I'll call Detective Rivera. He'll want to know about the medication. Eleanor was shaking, tears streaming down her face. I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. Did she kill my son? She asked brokenly. I don't know for certain, I answered honestly, but we're going to find out. It took 3 more weeks for the full truth to emerge. The police investigation revealed that Tyler was indeed the missing baby from Denver, abducted by a woman matching Gina's description who had posed as a hospital volunteer. DNA testing confirmed he wasn't related to either Mark or Gina. The medication bottle provided critical evidence. Forensic analysis showed Mark's pills had been replaced with a much higher dosage, enough to cause disorientation or unconsciousness while driving. Not technically murder, but certainly manslaughter if they could prove she'd tampered with them. Gina fled the state the night of our confrontation, but was apprehended at the Canadian border 3 days later. Tyler, with her, the baby was returned to his real parents in Denver, a reunion that made national news. As for me, I finally had answers, though they brought more pain than closure. Mark had made a terrible mistake, one that ultimately cost him his life. But he hadn't abandoned me, hadn't fathered another woman's child, hadn't written a will giving away my home. 6 months after Mark's death, I stood in our backyard, watching Eleanor plant bulbs along the fence line. She visited often now, our shared grief and quest for justice having forged a deeper bond between us. The prosecutor called, I told her, handing her a glass of lemonade. They've added identity theft and fraud charges based on evidence from Michigan. They're confident she'll serve significant time. Eleanor nodded, wiping soil from her hands. It doesn't bring him back. No, I agreed. Nothing will. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The grief was still there, would always be there, but the anger had subsided, replaced by a quiet determination to move forward. I'm selling the house, I said suddenly. It's too big for just me. Too many memories. Eleanor squeezed my hand. Where will you go? I'm not sure yet. Somewhere new. Somewhere I can start fresh. I smiled faintly. But not too far. I want to be able to have Sunday tea with you. I'd like that, she said softly. Later that night, alone in my kitchen, I opened the notebook where I'd been documenting everything since that first birthday party, when Gina had made her outrageous claim. The final entry detailed her sentencing: 15 to 20 years for a litany of charges, including kidnapping, identity fraud, extortion, and involuntary manslaughter. The woman who had tried to steal my life, who had possibly taken my husband's, would spend most of her remaining youth behind bars. Her schemes, her lies, her manipulations had finally caught up with her. Some might call it justice, others karma. But I knew the truth. It wasn't revenge that had brought Gina down. It was patience, thoroughness, a refusal to be intimidated or bullied into surrender. In the end, I hadn't needed to destroy her. She'd done that all by herself. I'd simply made sure she couldn't escape the consequences of her actions. I closed the notebook and placed it on a shelf in my office, a reminder not of what I'd lost, but of what I'd survived. Tomorrow, I would call a real estate agent. The day after, I would look at apartments closer to downtown. Life would go on, and somewhere in Denver, a little boy named Tyler was back with his real parents. Too young to remember the woman who had tried to use him as a pawn in her deadly game. That, perhaps, was the most important victory of all. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they could manipulate you, hit that like button. If this story of patience and justice resonated with you, subscribe for more true life-inspired tales of resilience. And if you know someone dealing with gaslighting or manipulation, share this video with them. Sometimes seeing through someone else's experience helps us recognize what's happening in our own lives. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Abby's journey. What would you have done in her situation? I know who you are, she said, her voice suddenly sharp and clear. You're the reason my cousin attempted suicide. The words sliced through the pristine silence of our office corner. My rehearsed welcome speech evaporated from my lips. The new hire, this woman who had barely spoken 10 words during her entire interview, was now staring at me with eyes that burned through any professional pretense. 3 years ago, the regional art competition, my cousin was 16. You were a judge. I felt my breath catch as fragments of memory assembled themselves. A teenage girl with extraordinary talent. The envelope of cash I'd accepted. The scholarship opportunity I'd helped snatch away. She read your glowing feedback about the winner's originality. The same techniques you had criticized in her work, the new employee continued, her voice steady while my world tilted. Do you know what happens to a young artist when their dream is stolen by corruption? My throat constricted. That's a serious accusation. I don't know what you think. I don't think. I know. She turned to her computer, suddenly the picture of professional calm. But don't worry, I'm here to work. I struggled to breathe normally, to process what had just happened. This couldn't be real. After 3 years, after I'd nearly forgotten about that competition, this woman had appeared, hired by my own boss, seated beside me, ready to… What? What exactly did she want? She began typing, her fingers moving with practiced precision across the keyboard, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my carefully constructed life. You can't prove anything, I whispered, unable to stop myself. She didn't look up. I don't need to. Wait, before I continue this story that's already got people glued to their screens, if you're enjoying this twisted workplace drama unfolding, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to catch more shocking true stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment with what you think happens next. Trust me, you won't see it coming. My name is Pearl. At 34, I'd spent 7 years climbing the ladder at my marketing job, becoming the team leader who trained every new hire. My colleagues described me as meticulous, confident, always put together. I wore success like my signature scarlet lipstick, bold and unmistakable. What they didn't see were the shortcuts I'd taken, the corners I'd cut, the people I'd stepped on. I told myself, everyone did it. That's how the world worked. You seized opportunities when they presented themselves, like when a wealthy parent approached me about that art competition, offering cash to make sure their child won the scholarship. It wasn't personal. It was just business. Until Autumn arrived. Autumn was 28 with auburn hair she kept in a simple ponytail. She dressed modestly in neutral colors, spoke rarely in meetings, and submitted work ahead of schedule. My boss, Dale, had practically gushed about her portfolio during her interview. "She's brilliant but quiet," he'd said. "Perfect for our team." I wasn't worried. New hires came and went. Training them only secured my position further, until those first words she spoke to me alone revealed she was not just another employee. She was a ticking bomb placed directly beside me. The first week was agony. I expected her to expose me to Dale, to send emails revealing my past. I prepared excuses, explanations, denials, but she did nothing except excel at every task. She arrived early, stayed late, learned systems quickly. Clients adored her restrained brilliance. By the second week, I started giving her impossible tasks, a complete rebranding concept due in hours instead of days, client presentations with deliberately missing information, projects that had caused previous employees to crack. Autumn completed everything flawlessly. "How are you finding your new team member?" Dale asked me at the end of the month, eyes bright with satisfaction at his hiring choice. I forced my lips into a smile. "She's adjusting well." "Adjusting?" "She's exceptional." The Winslow account specifically requested her concepts for their campaign after seeing her preliminary work. The Winslow account, my account, the one I'd nurtured for 3 years. I guided her closely on that, I said, feeling heat creep up my neck. Dale tilted his head. "She mentioned she worked on it after hours since you had her focused on the Monroe project." My smile froze. "Right, yes, she takes initiative." That night, I stayed late, waiting until the office emptied. When Autumn finally left, I slipped to her desk, searching for something, anything, evidence of her plotting against me, communications with her cousin, proof she was sabotaging me somehow. Her desk was immaculate, not even a post-it note with a personal reminder. Her computer was locked and company issued. Nothing seemed out of place except a small plant she'd brought, a tiny cactus, in a plain white pot. Frustrated, I returned to my desk, jumping when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Looking for something?" I whirled around, scanning the empty office, the security cameras. Had she somehow seen me? I deleted the message, hands trembling. The next morning, Autumn greeted me with her usual quiet good morning as if nothing had happened. When I checked the security footage later, claiming I thought I'd left something at the office, the night guard showed me the feed. There I was, clearly searching through her desk. I asked him to delete it, saying I was leaving a surprise for her birthday. He agreed, but I wondered who else had already seen it. By the third month, my errors began multiplying. I sent incomplete drafts to clients. I missed deadlines. I snapped at junior team members. Meanwhile, Autumn's reputation soared. She never mentioned the art competition again, never threatened me, never did anything except perform her job with quiet excellence. That was when I began spreading rumors. "She cornered me in the bathroom yesterday," I told Tessa from accounting. Kept asking strange personal questions. Seemed obsessed with my life outside work. "Really?" Tessa looked surprised. "She helped me fix my presentation yesterday when the projector glitched. Seemed so shy." "That's her technique," I whispered. "Two-faced. She has an agenda, I'm telling you." I tried variations with different colleagues. Autumn was difficult to work with. Autumn took credit for others' ideas. Autumn made uncomfortable comments, but like a boomerang, each rumor returned to strike me. Actually, she helped me solve that client issue. She gave me full credit in the meeting. She stayed late to finish when you left early. My credibility cracked while hers strengthened. I began having nightmares about the art competition, about the teenage girl whose paintings had shown such raw talent. In my dreams, the girl's face morphed into Autumn's, watching me with knowing eyes as I drowned in paint. 4 months after Autumn's arrival, Dale called us both into his office. I walked in confidently, assuming he wanted my assessment of her performance. Instead, he gestured for us to sit, his expression serious. "We're restructuring the team," he announced. Given the growth we're experiencing and the new direction of our campaigns, we need to adjust our leadership approach. I nodded, already planning how to shift more responsibility to other team members so I could focus on strategy. Autumn, Dale continued, I'd like you to take over as team leader. Your work has shown exceptional vision and organization. The room seemed to tilt. That's my position, I said, my voice thin. I've been here for 7 years. Dale looked uncomfortable. And in those 7 years, you've never shown the leadership qualities she's demonstrated in 4 months. Pearl, you'll report to Autumn starting Monday. My face burned. This is ridiculous. You can't demote me for a new hire. It's not a demotion. Your title remains, but the reporting structure changes. Your recent performance issues are concerning, Pearl. Maybe with some guidance. Performance issues I'm having because of her. I pointed at Autumn, who sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. She's only here for revenge. Ask her about her cousin and the art competition. She admitted it to me her first day. Dale's brow furrowed. What art competition? The regional one, 3 years ago. I was a judge. She claims I took bribes to favor another contestant over her cousin, who then tried to kill herself. She told me this. Ask her. Dale turned to Autumn, confusion evident. Is this true? Autumn tilted her head slightly. Art competition? I don't have a cousin who's an artist. But you said, I sputtered, heat rushing to my face. You told me your cousin attempted suicide because of me, right there at your desk, your first day. Autumn's expression remained placid. I never said anything about art or cousins. I've been focused on learning the job you're training me for. She turned to Dale with concern in her eyes. Pearl has been acting strangely for weeks, checking my desk after hours, spreading stories about me. Dale's eyes widened. Is that true, Pearl? No, she's lying. My voice cracked as I realized how I sounded. The security footage, the failed rumors, my deteriorating work. I was concerned about some missing files, but the security team mentioned you reviewed footage from after hours, Dale said quietly. Something about leaving a birthday surprise? My mouth went dry. She's manipulating everyone. She's doing this on purpose. Dale exchanged a glance with Autumn before sighing. Pearl, I think you should take some time off. 2 weeks. Clear your head, get some rest. But this isn't a request, Dale said firmly. We'll redistribute your current projects temporarily. Said, I walked out in a daze, Autumn's voice floating behind me as she assured Dale she could handle the transition. My hands shook as I gathered my purse. Colleagues glanced away as I passed, their silence damning. Outside, the bright spring sunshine felt like a mockery. Had I imagined that first conversation? Was I losing my mind? No, I remembered every word. Her accusation had been real, but now she'd twisted everything, making me appear unstable while she remained blameless. The 2 weeks away became torture. I checked my work email obsessively, finding my team managing perfectly without me. Clients emailed Autumn directly with questions that once came to me. Dale sent a single message asking how I was feeling, mentioning the excellent progress the team was making. I drove past the office twice, watching employees laugh together in the parking lot. Once, I spotted Autumn having lunch with 2 colleagues who had previously been my closest work friends. When I returned, my belongings had been moved to a tiny desk in the corner, away from the main team area. My name had been removed from the project management system for our major accounts. My key clients now listed Autumn as their primary contact. Just temporary, Dale assured me when I confronted him, while you readjust. But nothing was temporary. Within weeks, I was assigned to smaller accounts, helping with minor tasks rather than leading projects. In meetings, my suggestions were politely acknowledged, then ignored. When I stayed late to finish work, the night guard watched me carefully, probably warned after my desk-searching incident. Meanwhile, Autumn flourished. She implemented new systems that streamlined our workflow. She landed 2 major clients. She remembered everyone's birthdays, bringing simple homemade treats that made the office feel warmer. She never boasted, never drew attention to her accomplishments, which somehow made them more impressive. 6 weeks after my return, Dale called me in again. I'm sorry, Pearl, but we're eliminating your position due to redundancy. The words hit like physical blows. Redundancy? You're firing me? We're restructuring. Your severance package will be generous. 3 months' salary, plus benefits through the end of the year. After 7 years, you're replacing me with her. Dale's expression hardened. This isn't about Autumn. Your performance has been declining for months. The issues predated her arrival. That wasn't true. I'd been a star performer until she came, until she started her subtle sabotage, her psychological warfare. Is she behind this? I demanded. Did she push for this? Actually, she advocated keeping you. Said you had valuable institutional knowledge. Dale slid a folder across his desk. Your separation agreement. Take time to review it. I left the building in a fog, clutching the folder with white knuckles. 7 years erased. My career derailed. All because of a grudge about a teenage art competition that no one would believe existed. As I reached my car, a light tap on my shoulder made me jump. Autumn stood there, holding a sealed envelope. What do you want? I snapped, backing away. Haven't you done enough? This belongs to you, she said, extending the envelope. I snatched it, expecting termination paperwork, but inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping. The headline read, Regional Art Competition Winner Disqualified for Plagiarism. The article, dated 2 years after the competition, detailed how the winning entry had been proven to contain elements directly copied from established artists. Attached was a handwritten note. My cousin starts art school next fall. Thanks for the severance package that paid her tuition. The money you took as bribes came back to her tenfold. I looked up, mouth open, but Autumn was already walking away. Wait, I called. You said you didn't have a cousin. You denied everything. She paused, turning slightly. I never claimed anything to Dale. You did that yourself. You're destroying my life over a contest? It was just business, and this is just consequences. She tilted her head. You'll notice I never exposed you publicly, never told anyone what you did. I simply created a situation where you exposed yourself through your own actions. Why not just confront me, report me to the competition board? Why all this? Because you wouldn't have learned anything. You'd have denied it, hired lawyers, claimed vindictive accusations. Her eyes were calm. This way, you lost your job by your own hand. Your reputation suffered through your own behavior. And my cousin gets her education funded by your severance package. I am you, which you'll notice is exactly 10 times the bribe you accepted. The precision of it all staggered me. You planned this for 3 years? Applied for a job just to target me? Sometimes justice requires patience. She checked her watch. I need to get back. The team has a presentation at 3. I watched her walk away, her purposeful stride carrying her back to what had once been my life, my career, my team. Only then did I realize the true extent of her revenge. She never exposed me publicly, never told anyone what I'd done. She simply created a situation where I exposed myself through my own paranoia and incompetence. The revenge wasn't just taking my job, it was making me destroy myself. That night, I drove to the beach, the envelope on the passenger seat beside me. Waves crashed against the shore as I read the article again. The teenager who'd won with my help had been caught, her reputation damaged. The ripples of my corruption had touched more lives than I'd allowed myself to consider. I thought of calling a lawyer, fighting my termination, exposing Autumn's vendetta. But what would I say? That I was targeted for accepting bribes in a competition years ago? That I had unfairly crushed a young artist's dreams for cash? The truth would only bury me deeper. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She's painting again. I stared at the 3 words, understanding their weight. The cousin who had tried to end her life after losing the scholarship had found her way back to art. Despite what I'd done, she'd survived, was creating again. The salt air filled my lungs as I stepped onto the sand, shoes sinking with each step. The vastness of the ocean stretched before me, indifferent to human schemes and failures. For the first time, I saw myself clearly, not as the competent professional I'd pretended to be, but as someone who had caused real harm and was facing real consequences. I typed a response, fingers hesitant. I'm glad. 3 dots appeared then. Her first exhibition opens next month. The invitation is in your glove compartment. 3. I rushed back to my car, yanking open the glove compartment. Inside was an elegant card for an exhibition titled Resurrection by a young artist named Winter. The location was a small gallery across town. My hands trembled as I held the invitation, wondering how it had gotten there, wondering what I was meant to do with it. Another text arrived. Attend or don't, your choice, but you should see what almost died because of you. I drove home in silence, the invitation burning a hole in my purse. Would attending be an act of atonement or intrusion? Did I deserve to witness Winter's triumph after contributing to her darkest moment? Over the next weeks, I applied for jobs half-heartedly, each rejection feeling deserved. I avoided former colleagues, knowing how they must talk about my departure. I researched Winter online, finding sparse information about a promising young artist whose work explored themes of betrayal, recovery, and justice. The night of the exhibition arrived, and I stood outside the gallery for 20 minutes before finding the courage to enter. The space was small but elegant, filled with people admiring large canvases bursting with color and emotion. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, anonymous in my simple black dress, and then I saw her. Winter stood near the center of the gallery, tall and poised at 19, her dark hair cut in a sharp bob that framed intelligent eyes. She didn't look broken or damaged. She looked triumphant as she explained her work to an engaged group of listeners. I approached slowly, drawn to a painting labeled Corruption. It depicted hands passing money above a canvas partially submerged in murky water. The technique was masterful, the emotion raw and undeniable. What do you think? I turned to find Autumn beside me, dressed in burgundy, a glass of wine in her hand. It's powerful, I whispered. Yes, she agreed. She painted it after reading the article about the winner's disqualification. It was part of her healing. I swallowed hard. Is she okay now? Define okay. Autumn's voice remained low. She lost 2 years to depression, stopped painting entirely, questioned her worth, her talent, everything about herself. Because one person with power decided money. That night, I couldn't sleep. Winter's paintings haunted me, not just their technical brilliance, but the raw emotion pulsing through each canvas. One piece particularly lingered in my mind, a figure climbing from murky waters toward light, titled simply, After. I spent the following week in a strange limbo. Job applications remained unanswered. Former colleagues ignored my messages. I found myself returning to the gallery twice more, drawn to Winter's art like a penitent to confession. On my third visit, the gallery owner approached me. You've been here several times, she observed. Are you a collector? No, I admitted. Just connected to the artist's journey. She nodded thoughtfully. Winter's work speaks to many people. The authenticity of her pain and recovery resonates universally. Recovery, I repeated softly. Has she truly recovered from everything? The woman's eyes sharpened with sudden interest. Are you a friend of the family? Not exactly, I said, backing toward the exit. Just an admirer. At home, I opened my laptop and typed art therapy careers into the search bar. I'd never considered helping others through creative expression. My marketing career had been about manipulating emotions, not healing them. But something about Winter's transformation called to me, the possibility that destruction could lead to creation. The next morning, my phone rang with an unknown number. Pearl speaking, I answered tentatively. This is Winter. The young artist's voice was clear, direct. We need to talk. Can you meet me at the campus coffee shop in an hour? My heart raced. Why would you want to meet with me? Why would you want to meet with me? Because Autumn didn't tell you everything, she said, and I think you should know the whole story. The campus coffee shop buzzed with student energy. Winter sat in a corner booth, sketching in a small notebook. At 19, surrounded by her peers, she looked both younger and somehow older than she had at the gallery. She closed her notebook as I approached. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. I sat carefully, as if any sudden movement might shatter this unexpected moment. Your exhibition was incredible. You have extraordinary talent. I know, she said without arrogance. That's not in question anymore. A barista delivered 2 coffees I hadn't seen Winter order. She pushed one toward me. Autumn said you take it black. That seemed fitting somehow. I accepted the cup. What didn't she tell me? Winter traced the rim of her mug with one finger. After I lost the scholarship, after I tried to end things, I spent 6 months in treatment. During group therapy, I met another girl. She'd been the winner of a different competition, one where the judge had accepted bribes to favor her. I stiffened. I only did it once. Did you? Winter's gaze was unwavering, because this girl carried crushing guilt. Her mother had paid a judge to secure her win, but she hadn't known until afterward. When she discovered the truth, she tried to give back the prize, but was threatened with legal action for defamation. My hands trembled around my coffee cup. What are you saying? I'm saying corruption hurts everyone involved, not just the victims, but the so-called winners too. This girl and I formed a connection through our shared experiences. She from undeserved victory, me from undeserved defeat. What happened to her? Winter's expression softened slightly. She transferred schools. Last I heard, she was studying ethics and art history, planning to reform competition structures from within. She paused. Your actions created ripples you never considered, Pearl. Some destructive, some eventually constructive. Why are you telling me this? Because Autumn believes people can change when properly motivated. She orchestrated this elaborate plan partly for justice, partly for my healing, and partly, Winter hesitated. Partly what? Partly for you. I nearly spilled my coffee. For me? She destroyed my career. No, Winter corrected. You destroyed your career through your reactions to her presence. She merely created the conditions. That's semantics, I protested. Is it? Winter pulled out her phone. Tell me what you see. She showed me a series of images, screenshots of emails I'd sent to clients with errors, security footage of me searching Autumn's desk, text messages where I'd spread rumors about her. Autumn kept these as insurance, Winter explained, but she never needed to use them. You self-destructed without any push from her. Shame burned through me. So this meeting is what, my final humiliation? No, Winter put her phone away. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity. For what? The gallery where my exhibition is showing needs an assistant manager, someone with marketing experience who understands the business side of art. Winter met my eyes. Autumn suggested you. I laughed incredulously. You can't be serious. After everything, precisely because of everything, Winter interrupted. You understand firsthand how corruption destroys art's integrity. You've experienced the consequences of dishonesty, and now you need redemption. Why would you trust me anywhere near your art career? Winter's smile was slight but genuine. Because having you work in service of emerging artists, including me, is a more meaningful consequence than watching you struggle unemployed. Autumn agrees. Autumn knew about this meeting? It was her idea, the final phase of her plan. I sat back, stunned. What plan? First, to make you face what you'd done by bringing me back into your life. Second, to let you experience the loss of something you valued as I did. Third, to give you a path toward restoration, not of what you lost, but of something new you could build. The calculated precision of it all left me breathless. She orchestrated every moment. My professional collapse, your artistic resurrection, and now this. This job offer? Not every moment, Winter corrected. Your choices remained your own throughout. You could have responded differently at each step. And if I had, different consequences would have unfolded. Winter checked her watch. The gallery owner expects your call by 5 if you're interested. The pay is less than your corporate salary, but the work has integrity. She stood, gathering her belongings. I remained seated, processing everything. Why would Autumn go to such lengths? I finally asked. Most people would have simply reported me to the competition board, sued me, or exposed me publicly. Winter paused. Because traditional punishment rarely creates change. Autumn believes in transformative justice, consequences that force growth rather than mere suffering. She shouldered her bag. Also, I asked her not to destroy you completely. I didn't want your ruin on my conscience. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Did she know I would come to your exhibition? Winter glanced back. She counted on it. Autumn understands people's psychology, what drives them, what breaks them, and what might heal them. Alone at the table, I contemplated the job offer. Working at the gallery would keep me surrounded by Winter's art, a daily reminder of my worst actions and their consequences. It would place me in a position of supporting artists rather than exploiting them. It would be both punishment and possibility. That evening, I called the gallery owner. She seemed unsurprised, explaining that Autumn had given me an unusual but compelling recommendation. I would start Monday, at roughly half my previous salary. On my first day, Autumn appeared at the gallery during lunch. She moved through the space with easy familiarity, examining new installations while I watched nervously from behind the counter. Settling in? She asked, approaching finally. It's different, I admitted, but good different. She nodded. Winter told you about our conversation. Yes, I straightened a stack of exhibition catalogs. What I don't understand is why you're continuing to involve yourself in my life. You won. Your revenge succeeded beyond what most people would dream possible. Autumn studied me thoughtfully. That perspective reveals you still don't fully understand what happened. Then explain it to me, I challenged. Because from where I stand, you infiltrated my workplace, systematically dismantled my career, exposed my worst actions, and now have me working essentially in service to your cousin's art career. Those are the external events, Autumn acknowledged, but they're not the revenge. Then what was? The true revenge was forcing you to confront yourself, not just what you did to Winter, but who you became by doing it. She picked up one of Winter's exhibition postcards from the counter. A person who accepts bribes once rarely stops there. Your performance issues predated me, Pearl. Your ethical shortcuts were increasing. You were on a path to much greater corruption. So you're saying you saved me from myself? I scoffed. How magnanimous. No, I made you experience the consequences of your actions in a way that might actually transform you. Traditional revenge, public exposure, legal action would have made you defensive, bitter, convinced of your victimhood. Autumn placed the postcard back carefully. This way, you had to watch yourself deteriorate through your own choices. You had to recognize your own corruption. And this job? Is this part of my transformation too? It's an opportunity, not a guarantee. You might use it to rebuild yourself into someone better. Or you might resort to old habits and lose this position too. She shrugged. That choice remains yours. The gallery door chimed as a potential buyer entered. Autumn stepped back. Winter's next series begins production next month, she said. The theme is Resurrection. You'll be helping promote it. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Will you be watching me forever? Is this surveillance part of my penance? Autumn paused at the door. This was never about penance, Pearl. It was about justice. And justice isn't achieved through perpetual punishment. It's achieved through genuine change. After she left, I helped the customer who had entered, answering questions about Winter's techniques and inspiration. For the first time, I found myself advocating sincerely for an artist's vision, rather than calculating how to manipulate the customer's emotions for a sale. That night, I received a final text from Autumn. The revenge is complete. What happens next is no longer about Winter or me. It's about who you choose to become. 3 months later, Winter's Resurrection series opened to critical acclaim. Standing in the gallery I now helped manage, I watched her speak confidently to critics and collectors about her journey from despair to creative rebirth. Several pieces sold within the first hour, including one to the former competition winner who had unwittingly benefited from my corruption. After the opening, Winter approached me with an unexpected request. I want to paint you, she said, for my next series. Me? I was stunned. Why would you want me as a subject? Because transformation is my next theme, she explained, and yours has been instructive. I'm not transformed, I admitted. I'm still struggling with who I was, who I am now. Exactly, Winter nodded. That's what makes you the perfect subject. The struggle itself is where the art lives. As guests filtered out and the gallery quieted, I found myself alone with the exhibition. Winter's new paintings surrounded me, each one depicting some aspect of resurrection. In the center hung a piece I hadn't noticed before, a small canvas showing 2 hands, one offering something indistinct, the other hesitantly reaching to accept it. The title plate read, Second Chances. I stood before it for a long time, understanding finally the true nature of Autumn's revenge. She hadn't merely punished me or exposed me. She hadn't simply taken what I valued or humiliated me publicly. She had methodically dismantled everything I thought I was, stripped away my defenses and denials, forced me to witness the harm I'd caused, and then offered me the one thing I didn't deserve, the opportunity to rebuild myself into someone better. The revenge wasn't in what she took from me. It was in what she demanded I become. As the gallery lights dimmed automatically at closing time, I sent a text to the number Autumn had used. I understand now. The response came quickly. Then it worked. If you've been moved by Pearl's journey from corruption to consequence to potential redemption, take a moment to reflect on your own choices. Like, comment, and subscribe if you believe in second chances, or if you're fascinated by justice that transforms rather than merely punishes. Share your thoughts. Would you have given Pearl the opportunity Winter and Autumn offered? Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't about revenge at all, but about what happens after the vengeance is complete. All that money shouldn't go to someone who married into the family. She doesn't understand our legacy or values, I heard my sister-in-law Nessa say through the kitchen doorway. Her voice was quiet but sharp, like the knife she was using to slice the anniversary cake. $23 million. What does Valerie even know about managing that kind of wealth? Grandmother should have left it to those of us with actual Bennett blood. Her words cut through me as I stood frozen in the hallway, the bottle of chilled champagne growing warm in my hands. I'd come to help with our anniversary celebration preparations, but instead discovered what my husband's sister really thought of me. She'll probably spend it all on ridiculous renovations and clothes. Nessa continued to whoever was listening. Someone needs to protect that inheritance before she wastes everything our family built over generations. I backed away silently, my throat tight with betrayal. 5 years of family dinners, holiday celebrations, and what I thought were genuine smiles, all while she secretly resented me for marrying her brother, for being remembered in her grandmother's will. But what happened 3 months later at our anniversary party went beyond resentment. I was arranging flowers near the kitchen island when I glanced up to see Nessa standing alone by the drink table. She looked around quickly, then reached into her clutch purse. A small white pill appeared between her fingers. With practiced precision, she dropped it into one of the crystal flutes, the one decorated with a silver ribbon, my glass, which she herself had marked earlier. The tablet dissolved instantly, leaving only a momentary fizz that disappeared within seconds. My heart hammered against my ribs as she smiled to herself, apparently satisfied with whatever she had just done. Time seemed to slow as I processed what I'd witnessed. My sister-in-law had just drugged my drink at my own anniversary party, in the home I'd renovated with the inheritance that she clearly believed should belong to her family. The musicians began playing our wedding song in the garden, my cue to join everyone outside. Nessa turned toward the sound, then picked up the tray of champagne flutes. I ducked behind a column as she walked past, carrying what was intended to be my poisoned glass. My mind raced through possibilities. What had she put in there? Something to make me sick? To embarrass me in front of our guests? Or something worse? I thought of her increasingly frequent questions about my health since the inheritance, her sudden interest in becoming my financial advisor, the way she'd asked to be added to our home security system, just in case. Confronting her would cause a scene, devastate my husband Theo, and potentially split the family forever. But drinking whatever she'd slipped into my glass wasn't an option. The garden lights twinkled as guests mingled on the stone patio. Theo waved at me from across the lawn, his smile wide and unsuspecting. How could I tell him his beloved sister had just tried to drug me? Would he even believe me? I watched Nessa approach him, carrying the tray of specially marked glasses. "Special glasses for the happy couple," she announced, handing him his glass before scanning the crowd for me. My opportunity came unexpectedly when the caterer called for her assistance. "The chef was asking for you in the kitchen," I told her. "Something about the dessert presentation?" The moment she disappeared inside, I made my move. I switched my glass with her husband Caleb's, placing it exactly where he'd been standing before he stepped away to greet another guest. My hands trembled slightly, but the deed was done in seconds. When everyone gathered again for the toast, Nessa returned, her eyes repeatedly drifting to my glass, the one she thought was mine but now belonged to her husband, Caleb, a man who rarely questioned her decisions. It picked up the flute without hesitation. "To 5 wonderful years," Theo proclaimed, raising his glass. Everyone drank. I brought the champagne to my lips but didn't swallow, watching Caleb over the rim of my glass. Within minutes, he began loosening his tie. His movements became uncoordinated as he stumbled against a chair. When he tried to excuse himself, his speech slurred noticeably. Perspiration beaded on his temples despite the evening chill. "Are you feeling well?" I asked calmly. Nessa stared at her husband, then at me. The color drained from her face as realization dawned in her eyes. She knew I knew, and now her husband was suffering the effects of whatever she had intended for me. "He needs help," I announced to the room. "Someone call an ambulance." As guests clustered around Caleb, I gripped Nessa's wrist. "Whatever you put in that drink will be found in his system," I whispered. Imagine explaining that to the doctors. To him, her eyes widened with fear, and for the first time since I'd known her, Nessa had nothing to say. I've never shared this story publicly before now. If you've ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted, someone who should have been family, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about justice served cold. Comment below if you've ever caught someone in a moment of absolute betrayal. I read every comment. My name is Valerie, and until that night 3 years ago, I believed family meant unconditional love and acceptance. I'd grown up in a modest household with parents who worked multiple jobs to give me opportunities they never had. Meeting Theo felt like winning the lottery, not because of his family's status, but because he saw me for who I truly was, ambitious yet kind, determined yet vulnerable. When his grandmother June took an immediate liking to me, I was touched. She invited me for tea weekly, showing me photo albums and telling stories about her late husband's business ventures. June had built their family fortune through smart investments after her husband died young. Most people thought I should sell everything and live quietly, she once told me. But I learned the business inside and out, proved them all wrong. I admired her strength and independence. We bonded over our shared experiences of being underestimated. While Theo's siblings visited June only on holidays or when they needed financial assistance, I genuinely enjoyed her company. Never once did I imagine she would leave her estate to me, instead of dividing it among her grandchildren. The reading of her will left everyone shocked, none more than Nessa, whose face contorted with disbelief when the lawyer announced, I would inherit June's countryside property and investment portfolio, valued at approximately $23 million. There must be some mistake, Nessa had said, her voice trembling. Grandmother wouldn't leave everything to someone who isn't even blood family. But June's instructions were clear. Her letter, read aloud by the attorney, explained, Valerie has shown genuine interest in preserving my late husband's legacy. She visited without wanting anything but my company. I trust her judgment and heart to protect what George and I built together. Theo was stunned but supportive. Grandmother always had her reasons, he said afterward, hugging me as I sat numb with surprise. She must have seen something special in you. His brother Caleb shrugged it off with seemingly good humor. Well, at least it stays in the family, right? Congratulations, Val. Only Nessa couldn't hide her resentment. Her congratulations came through clenched teeth, her hug stiff and brief. The following weeks revealed the depth of her jealousy. She began suggesting financial advisors, all mysteriously connected to her somehow. She questioned my renovation plans for June's historic country house. Shouldn't Theo have more input? She'd ask. After all, he grew up visiting that house. You're new to all this. When I declined her recommended financial team, choosing instead advisors from the firm June had trusted for decades, Nessa became increasingly intrusive. She'd drop by unannounced to check on things. She asked pointed questions about my health when I missed a family dinner due to a migraine. Family history of illness? She'd inquired with unusual interest. Any medications you take regularly? Some health conditions skip generations, you know. Theo dismissed my concerns. She's just worried about you, he insisted. You're working too hard managing the estate and your job. Nessa means well, but the night she asked to be added to our home security system in case of emergencies, I couldn't shake my unease. I started paying more attention to her actions, noticing small things, how she'd scan papers left on my desk when she thought I wasn't looking, her whispered phone conversations that stopped when I entered a room. The anniversary party was my peace offering, a celebration at the newly renovated country estate to include everyone in June's legacy. I wanted to show Theo's family that I considered the inheritance a responsibility to the entire Bennett family, not just personal wealth. The morning of the party, I woke early to oversee final preparations. The house looked magnificent, with flowers from June's garden arranged throughout and photographs of the family displayed prominently. I'd even framed Theo's childhood drawing of the house, hanging it in the entrance hall. Nessa arrived hours before other guests. I came to help, she announced, carrying a bag of supplies. You shouldn't have to manage everything alone on your anniversary. I thanked her, touched by what seemed like a genuine olive branch. Let me arrange the toast, she insisted with unusual eagerness. You should be enjoying yourself. I agreed, not realizing her true intentions until that moment in the kitchen, when I saw the white pill dissolve in my drink. Now, as the paramedics rushed into our garden party, lifting Caleb onto a stretcher, guests murmured in concern. Theo hovered nearby, his face tight with worry for his brother-in-law. What happened? He asked, gripping my hand. He was fine 1 minute then. I squeezed his fingers, uncertain how to respond. How could I tell my husband that his sister had tried to drug me? That I had switched the glasses in a moment of self-preservation? Nessa knelt beside the stretcher, her face a mask of concern as she stroked Caleb's forehead. But when our eyes met over her husband's semi-conscious form, I saw something dangerous flicker there, a mix of hatred and fear. The paramedics asked what he'd consumed. Before anyone could answer, I stepped forward. Just champagne, as far as I know, I said calmly. But perhaps a full toxicology screen would be wise. Nessa's head snapped up, her eyes widening. Yes, I continued. We should be thorough. We wouldn't want to miss anything important. As the ambulance doors closed with Caleb inside, Nessa turned to me, her composure cracking slightly. I should go with him, she said, her voice unsteady. Of course, I replied evenly. We'll follow in our car. In the chaos of the moment, our guests hardly noticed the tension between us. Theo was already apologizing to everyone, explaining that the party would need to end early due to the medical emergency. During the drive to the hospital, Theo gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. What do you think happened? Food allergy? Bad reaction to the champagne? I kept my eyes on the road ahead. I'm not sure, I said carefully, but I'm worried about Caleb. The waiting room was eerily quiet when we arrived. Nessa sat alone, her designer dress wrinkled, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, a rare moment of imperfection for someone who prided herself on flawless appearances. They're running tests, she told Theo when he rushed to her side. They think it might be some kind of drug reaction. Her eyes flickered to mine briefly, a silent warning passing between us. Drug reaction? Theo repeated, confused. But Caleb doesn't take anything besides his blood pressure medication. Doesn't take anything besides his blood pressure medication. The doctor emerged an hour later, clipboard in hand. Mrs. Bennett, he called, and Nessa stood immediately. Your husband is stable now, he explained, but we found some concerning substances in his system that shouldn't be there. Has he been taking any new medications recently? Any recreational substances? Nessa's face went pale. No, nothing like that. He's very careful because of his heart condition. The doctor nodded gravely. Well, what we found could have triggered a serious cardiac event given his condition. It's fortunate you got him here quickly. We'd like to keep him overnight for observation. When the doctor left, Nessa sank back into her chair, shoulders hunched. I don't understand, Theo said, running a hand through his hair. How could this happen? I touched his arm gently. Why don't you get some coffee? This might be a long night. Once Theo was out of earshot, I sat beside Nessa. Neither of us spoke for several long moments. What did you put in that drink? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She stared straight ahead. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I saw you, Nessa, by the champagne table. You didn't think anyone was watching, but I was. Her breathing quickened, but she maintained her composure. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove it, I replied. The toxicology report will show exactly what was in Caleb's system. Your husband's system, I emphasized. And then there will be questions. Difficult questions. She turned to face me, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crack. What do you want? I want to understand why. Was the money really worth trying to hurt me? Nessa's laugh was hollow. You have no idea what that inheritance means to our family. That estate was built by Bennetts. That money was earned by Bennetts. You've been part of this family for 5 minutes, and suddenly you control everything my grandparents worked their entire lives to build. June chose me for a reason, I said quietly. Because you manipulated her, Nessa hissed. You played the perfect granddaughter while the rest of us were busy with our actual lives. The conversation ended abruptly as Theo returned with 3 coffee cups. The silence that followed was suffocating. That night at the hospital marked the beginning of a silent war between Nessa and me. On the surface, nothing changed. We still attended family dinners. We exchanged birthday gifts. We smiled in photographs. But underneath, everything was different. I hired a security company to install cameras throughout the estate. I changed the alarm codes monthly. I started having my food and drinks tested randomly when Nessa had been near them. Some might call it paranoia. I called it survival. The weeks following Caleb's hospitalization were tense. The doctors had found a combination of sedatives in his system that they couldn't explain. He had no memory of taking anything unusual. Nessa suggested someone at the party might have spiked the champagne as a prank, but her explanation fell flat when they asked why only Caleb was affected. I could have exposed her then. A single word from me would have been enough to direct suspicion her way, but that would have devastated Theo, who, despite everything, loved his sister deeply. Instead, I began my own quiet investigation into Nessa's life. If she had tried to drug me once, she might try again, and I needed leverage to protect myself. What I discovered shocked even me. Nessa's perfectly curated life was crumbling beneath the surface. Her interior design business was failing. She and Caleb were 3 months behind on their mortgage. Credit card debt had piled up, luxury purchases, expensive vacations, all funded by plastic while they maintained the illusion of success. Most disturbing were the emails between Nessa and a man named Parker, a financial consultant with questionable credentials. Their correspondence detailed plans to help me manage my inheritance once I was in a more suggestible state. Parker assured her that the substance he provided would make me compliant enough to sign whatever documents they placed before me. I downloaded everything, storing copies in multiple secure locations. Insurance, I told myself, not revenge, not yet. 2 months after the anniversary party, Theo received a promotion that required frequent travel. Nessa immediately volunteered to keep me company during his absences. I worry about you alone in that big house, she told me over lunch, her smile not reaching her eyes. Besides, it would give us a chance to bond as sisters. That's thoughtful, I replied, matching her false warmth. But I've hired a live-in housekeeper. Marta starts next week. Disappointment flickered across Nessa's face before she masked it. Well, that's practical. Still, I'll drop by often. Sisters should stick together. Each of her visits became a carefully choreographed dance. She'd bring food, just to be nice, which I'd graciously accept and later discard. She'd suggest we share a bottle of wine, which I'd pour but never drink. She'd ask increasingly pointed questions about the inheritance, about my health, about my marriage. Theo mentioned you've been having trouble sleeping, she said during one visit, her concern seemingly genuine. I have these amazing herbal supplements that helped me through a rough patch. Would you like to try them? I smiled, declining politely. My doctor has me on a strict regimen, but thank you. As months passed, Nessa grew increasingly desperate. The facade of her perfect life was cracking visibly now. Caleb had been laid off from his executive position. They'd listed their house for sale. Rumors circulated about them downsizing, moving to an apartment. During a family dinner at their home, ID, their last before the sale finalized, I excused myself to use the bathroom. On impulse, I checked their medicine cabinet, finding an unmarked bottle containing small white pills identical to what Nessa had dropped in my champagne. I photographed the bottle but left it untouched. Another piece of insurance. That night, as we were leaving, Nessa hugged me tightly. We should have lunch soon, she whispered. Just us girls. I have a business opportunity I'd love to discuss with you. Her desperation was palpable, but so was her determination. I realized then that she wouldn't stop. The financial pressure, the resentment, the entitlement, they were a dangerous combination. I'd like that, I lied. Call me next week. On the drive home, Theo sighed heavily. I'm worried about Nessa and Caleb. Things seem really tight for them right now. You're thinking of helping them? I asked carefully. He nodded. Maybe a loan to help them get back on their feet. We have more than enough. My stomach tightened. That's generous. But would it solve the underlying problem? What do you mean? I chose my words carefully. Money problems are often symptoms of deeper issues. Spending habits, priorities, choices. Theo frowned. Nessa's always been responsible. This downturn isn't her fault. I didn't argue, but later that night, I pulled up the file of evidence I'd collected. The emails with Parker, the credit card statements showing years of overspending, the photos of the unmarked pills. Not yet, I told myself again. Not unless absolutely necessary. The lunch Nessa suggested happened the following week at an upscale restaurant of her choosing. She appeared more polished than she'd been in months. New haircut, designer outfit, fresh manicure. The desperate woman from the family dinner was gone, replaced by the confident, poised Nessa I'd first met years ago. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her smile bright as she ordered champagne for the table. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our family, about the future. Oh, I took a sip of water, watching her carefully. I haven't been fair to you, she admitted, surprising me with what sounded like genuine remorse. Grandmother chose you for a reason, and I should respect that. I've been so caught up in my own expectations that I couldn't see how good you've been for Theo, for the family property. The champagne arrived, and Nessa poured 2 glasses with flourish. To new beginnings, she proposed, raising her glass. To sisters. I lifted my glass but didn't drink, watching as she took a generous sip. I have a proposal, she continued, setting down her champagne. Caleb and I are starting fresh. Downsizing has been humbling but clarifying. We're focusing on what truly matters. That's admirable, I said cautiously. The thing is, she leaned forward, lowering her voice, we've found the perfect opportunity to rebuild. A property development just outside the city. Ground floor investment, guaranteed returns. The problem is, we need capital to secure our position. And there it was. The real purpose of the lunch, the reconciliation, the champagne. How much capital? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't provide it. 2 million, she said smoothly. I know it sounds like a lot, but the return would be substantial. You could be a silent partner, or consider it a loan with interest. I nodded thoughtfully, pretending to consider. Tell me more about this development. For the next 20 minutes, Nessa outlined an investment opportunity that sounded increasingly dubious. No specific location, no named developers, vague promises of exclusive access and guaranteed returns. It sounds interesting, I said finally. I'd need to see the prospectus, of course, and have my financial team review it. Her smile faltered slightly. It's moving quickly. We'd need to commit within the week. That's not a problem. Email me the details this afternoon, and I'll have my advisors look at it immediately. We finished lunch with surface-level pleasantries. As we walked to our cars, Nessa surprised me by hugging me tightly. I'm so glad we had this talk, she said. I feel like we're finally understanding each other. I returned her embrace, feeling something hard press against my side, her phone in her jacket pocket, recording our conversation. The realization sent ice through my veins. Whatever game she was playing had escalated. Me too, I replied, pulling away with a smile. I look forward to seeing those investment documents. That evening, the promised prospectus arrived in my email. It was impressively professional looking, but conspicuously missing crucial details. No company registration numbers, no verifiable developer information, no property titles. I forwarded it to my actual financial advisor with a simple question. Is this legitimate? His response came within hours. Stay away. Classic investment scam structure. Whoever sent this is either being deceived or attempting to deceive you. As I stared at his email, another message arrived from Nessa. Thinking about our conversation today. So happy we're moving forward as true sisters. Theo will be thrilled we've reconciled. By the way, I recorded our lunch discussion for my project on family relationships. Hope you don't mind. Again, the threat was thinly veiled. If I didn't invest, she would manipulate our recorded conversation to drive a wedge between Theo and me. That night, I couldn't sleep. Theo was away on business, and the house felt cavernous and empty. I pulled out the file of evidence against Nessa again, spreading it across our bed. The emails with Parker, the financial records, the photographs of unmarked pills. Not yet, I had told myself repeatedly. But now I wondered, if not now, when? My phone chimed with a text from Nessa. Need your decision by tomorrow. This opportunity won't wait. 2 million opens the door to so much more for all of us. I stared at her message, feeling the weight of the past year, the poisoned champagne, the whispered threats, the constant vigilance. I was tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of testing my food, tired of protecting Theo from the truth about his sister. Something had to change. Someone had to end this. I picked up my phone and called a number I'd saved months ago but never used. Caleb? It's Valerie. I'm sorry to call so late. Can we meet tomorrow? There's something you need to know. The coffee shop I chose was 30 minutes from both our homes, neutral territory where we wouldn't likely encounter mutual friends. Caleb arrived looking thinner than I remembered, stress etching lines around his eyes that hadn't been there a year ago. Thanks for meeting me, I said, as he slid into the booth opposite me. He nodded, fidgeting with his wedding ring. Your call was unexpected. Is everything okay with Theo? Theo's fine, I assured him. This isn't about him. At least, not directly. Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. We had never been close. Our relationship defined primarily by our connections to Nessa and Theo, rather than any genuine bond. I'd always sensed he viewed me as an outsider, not unwelcome, but not truly family either. I'm going to ask you something important, I said, keeping my voice low despite the ambient chatter around us. And I need you to be honest. Have you been experiencing any unusual symptoms lately? Memory gaps? Unexplained drowsiness? His posture stiffened. Why would you ask that? Please just answer the question. He looked down at his untouched coffee. Yes, he admitted quietly. For months now, doctors can't figure it out. Some days I'm fine, other days I can barely stay awake. I've had tests, but nothing conclusive. I nodded, my suspicions confirmed. Have you noticed a pattern? Do these episodes happen on specific days, after particular meals? Confusion crossed his face, then dawning comprehension. You know something. Instead of answering directly, I opened my bag and removed a folder. Before I show you this, I want you to understand that I've struggled with what to do with this information. Theo loves his sister. Exposing her would hurt him deeply. Exposing her? Caleb repeated, his voice suddenly hoarse. What are you talking about? Exposing her. I slid the folder across the table. Everything is in here. Emails between Nessa and a man named Parker discussing how to drug me into compliance. Financial records showing significant cash withdrawals from your joint account corresponding with her meetings with this man. Photos of unmarked pills I found in your medicine cabinet. His hands trembled as he opened the folder, eyes scanning the first page of emails. This can't be real, he whispered. There's more, I said gently. Do you remember what happened at our anniversary party? When you collapsed? He looked up sharply. They said it was a reaction to alcohol and my heart medication. It wasn't. I took a deep breath. Nessa put something in my champagne. I saw her do it. When she stepped away, I switched our glasses. What you experienced was meant for me. The color drained from his face. He flipped through the folder with increasing agitation, stopping at the photographs of the white pills. These look like... He trailed off, then pulled out his phone. After a quick search, he turned the screen toward me. These. My doctor prescribed them for my insomnia last year. Nessa keeps them for me. On his screen was an image of prescription sleep medication, Emma says, powerful sedatives that, according to the warning label, could cause extreme drowsiness, confusion, and memory issues, especially when mixed with other substances. When do you take them? I asked. I don't, usually. Nessa gives them to me when she thinks I need help sleeping. Mostly on nights before important meetings or presentations. His voice faltered. Days when I've been less functional. We sat in silence as the implications sank in. Caleb continued examining the evidence, his expression shifting from disbelief to anger to profound sadness. Why are you showing me this? He finally asked. Why not go to the police? Because this isn't just about what she did to me, or even what she's apparently been doing to you, I explained. It's about Theo, too. He deserves to know the truth, but I don't want to be the one who destroys his relationship with his sister, I thought. I thought you should decide what happens next. Caleb closed the folder, his jaw tight, and if I do nothing, then I'll protect myself by whatever means necessary, I said firmly. Nessa is pressuring me to invest $2 million in what my advisors confirm is a fraudulent scheme. She's threatening to use manipulated recordings of our conversations against me if I don't comply. This has to stop. He nodded slowly. I need time to process this. I understand, but not too much time, I cautioned. She's escalating. I don't know what she might try next. As Caleb stood to leave, folder tucked securely under his arm, he paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About the inheritance. About how we've treated you. June was right to trust you. His words caught me by surprise. Thank you, I said simply. I'll handle this, he promised, his voice steadier than it had been during our entire conversation. Give me a week. The days that followed were excruciating. Nessa sent increasingly urgent messages about the investment opportunity, slipping away. Theo returned from his business trip, oblivious to the tension simmering beneath the surface of our lives. I jumped at every unexpected sound, checked my food and drinks compulsively, and slept fitfully. On the 6th day, Theo received a call from Caleb inviting us to dinner at their apartment, the modest 2-bedroom they'd downsized to after selling their house. Is everything okay? Theo asked, concerned. Caleb sounded weird. I'm sure it's fine, I said, hoping my voice didn't betray my anxiety. Maybe they have good news to share. The apartment building was nice, but unmistakably a step down from their previous home. Nessa greeted us with brittle cheerfulness, air-kissing our cheeks and ushering us inside. The space was tastefully decorated but small, with moving boxes still stacked in corners. Sorry about the mess, she said, gesturing vaguely at the boxes, still settling in. Caleb emerged from the kitchen, his expression unreadable as he handed everyone glasses of wine. To family, he toasted, his eyes meeting mine briefly before turning to Nessa, and to honesty. Something in his tone made Nessa glance at him sharply, but she recovered quickly, smiling as she sipped her wine. Dinner was a strange affair. Theo carried most of the conversation, oblivious to the currents of tension flowing between the rest of us. Nessa seemed distracted, checking her phone repeatedly. Caleb watched her with sad intensity. As we finished dessert, Caleb cleared his throat. We have an announcement to make. Nessa looked up in surprise. This clearly wasn't planned. Nessa and I are separating, he said calmly. Theo nearly choked on his coffee. What? Since when? It's been coming for a while, Caleb continued, his eyes never leaving Nessa's increasingly pale face. We've grown apart, want different things. But you never said anything, Theo protested, looking between them. I thought you were just going through a rough patch with the move and everything. So, Nessa found her voice. It's temporary, she said quickly. We're just taking some space to figure things out. No, Caleb contradicted gently. It's not temporary. I've already filed the paperwork. The room fell silent. Nessa's hands trembled as she set down her coffee cup. Maybe we should go, I suggested quietly to Theo. Give them some privacy. Actually, I'd like you both to stay, Caleb said. There's something else you should know. Nessa stood abruptly. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time, Caleb interrupted, his voice firmer than I'd ever heard it. Theo deserves to know why his sister has been trying to manipulate Valerie into giving her money. Theo turned to his sister in confusion. What is he talking about? Nessa's composure cracked. He's lying. He's angry about the separation and trying to turn you against me. Am I lying about this too? Caleb pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Nessa's voice filled the room, crystal clear. Parker, I need results faster. The pills you gave me barely affected her husband at the anniversary party, and now she's suspicious. I need something stronger but untraceable. The inheritance has to come to me. It's mine by right. A male voice responded. The dosage we discussed was already pushing safety limits. Any stronger and you risk permanent damage or worse. I don't care, Nessa's recorded voice continued. She doesn't deserve that money. Find something that works, or our arrangement is over. The recording ended. Theo stared at his sister, shock and disbelief etched on his face. What did you do? He whispered. Nessa's eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal's. It's not what it sounds like. That recording is taken out of context. I found these in our bathroom, Caleb continued, placing a small bottle of white pills on the table. The same pills you've been giving me on nights before, important work presentations. The same pills you put in Valerie's drink at their anniversary party. You've been drugging Caleb? Theo asked, his voice breaking. And you tried to drug Valerie? My wife? She stole what should have been ours, Nessa suddenly shouted, her careful facade completely shattered. $23 million, Theo. Our inheritance, our family legacy. This nobody walks in and takes everything grandmother built, and you just let it happen. The venom in her voice stunned us all into silence. I didn't steal anything, I said quietly. June made her choice. Because you manipulated her, Nessa spat, playing the perfect granddaughter while I was building my business, my life. You had nothing before you met Theo. Nothing. And now you control everything. Theo stood slowly, his face hardened in a way I'd never seen before. The only person who tried to manipulate anyone was you, Nessa. You drugged your own husband. You tried to drug my wife. What was next? Were you going to hurt her? Nessa didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. I think we're done here, Theo said flatly. Don't contact us again. As we gathered our things to leave, Caleb handed me a thick envelope. The rest of the evidence I found, he explained quietly. Bank statements showing she embezzled from my company to pay this Parker person. Communications with someone about forging your signature on financial documents. It's all there if you need it. I accepted the envelope with a nod. What will you do now? He glanced at Nessa, who sat rigidly at the table, staring at nothing. Start over, he said simply. Somewhere new, somewhere honest. Outside in the cool night air, Theo was silent as we walked to our car. When we were inside, he finally spoke. How long have you known? Since the anniversary party, I admitted. I saw her put something in my drink. That's why I switched the glasses. He closed his eyes, pain etched across his features. Why didn't you tell me? Because you love her, I said softly. Because I didn't want to be the reason you lost your sister. I thought I could handle it myself. He reached for my hand, holding it tightly. I'm so sorry, Val. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. You couldn't have known, but you tried to tell me, he insisted. All those times you expressed concerns about Nessa, I dismissed them. I chose not to see what was happening right in front of me. We drove home in contemplative silence. The weight of Nessa's betrayal hung heavily between us, but there was also a strange sense of relief. The truth, however painful, was finally out. 2 months later, we received notice that Nessa had moved across the country. Caleb's divorce was proceeding amicably, with him keeping quiet about the true reasons for their separation in exchange for a clean break. Theo had spoken to his sister only once since that night, a brief, painful conversation that ended with his making it clear that any relationship between them would require years of proven change on her part. As for the inheritance, I established a family foundation in June's name, dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs. I invited Theo's brother and his family to spend summers at the country estate, keeping June's tradition of family gatherings alive. The house felt warmer, somehow, without the shadow of Nessa's resentment hanging over it. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't what you do to someone who wronged you, it's what you allow them to do to themselves. Nessa's own actions exposed her true nature, cost her her marriage, her relationship with her brother, and her place in the family. All I did was refuse to be her victim and give her husband the information he deserved to have. I often think about what June told me during one of our last tea sessions together. Wealth doesn't just test those who don't have it, dear. It tests those who do, and those who believe they deserve it even more. She was right, as she so often was. If you've ever had to stand up to someone who tried to take what was rightfully yours, hit that like button. Subscribe for more stories about justice and redemption. And please comment below, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have exposed Nessa sooner? I read every comment and would love to hear your thoughts. Remember, family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's defined by those who truly want the best for you without expecting anything in return.